Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League, hosted on iRacing. And of course it is Season 8 of the series that continues to keep on asking the question, who is the master of the craft in a GT3 machine? Well, as we make our way into the final third of the season, of course with this being a 12-round season, we're at round number 9 and we have returned to Japan for the final visit to Japan with none other than the Suzuka circuit. Infamous, of course, for its figure of 8 layout, the Mie Prefecture circuit is also known for a circuit which is not afraid to cause championship drama over the course of a championship season, whether it be in a domestic cup all the way through to a major international series such as Formula 1. This circuit has seen it all over the years, and it's bound to see plenty of racing action between our drivers from Platinum all the way down to Bronze class tonight as they take to the tarmac for 40 minutes of racing action in another sprint race round. But as we get ready to go racing here and we look on at the sunny sides of the Suzuka circuit, we can see all of our drivers in the practice session at the moment, and with the time continuing to tick on down here, let's bring you into tonight. Firstly, this broadcast is being brought to you on YouTube as a live broadcast. The racing action you see in the background is happening right now. We have had a combination of post-round broadcasts and actual live broadcasts over the course of the season, but all the racing action you do see is live tonight, and as our drivers get set to go racing, we'll take you through the schedule shortly. But also this circuit, an absolutely thrilling one, and it's my pleasure as your host and commentator to bring you all the racing action for this round and indeed the remainder of the series. Who am I? Well, my name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And if you are tuning in tonight on the YouTube channel, do not be afraid to subscribe to the UKSimRacing YouTube channel to follow all the racing action as the series continues. Indeed, you won't want to miss a heartbeat of all the racing that occurs. Alternatively, if it is for our post-round broadcast, then you will want to go to our Twitch channel. That is twitch.tv/UKSimRacing. But talking about the schedule so far and what lies in wait, let's take you over to the season ahead. And indeed, we can see here on the calendar, we continue to gradually make our way down the right-hand side of the board. Last time out, we were in the United States of America for the Circuit of the Americas in round number 8. And on the 6th of November, we saw plenty to shout about with regards to the racing action in the Texan state, with our drivers really taking the fight to one another, and particularly in the gold class, we saw it go all the way down to the wire versus Martin Tilling and Alex Hill, but in the end, only one could come out on top. And indeed, that could be the story tonight, with it being a three-way fight between Hill, Tilling, and also Joshua Pratt. All three drivers very close together in the gold championship, and we're sure to see those drivers all look to try and get the upper hand on one another as they make their way into the final third of the season. But prior to that, back on the 30th of October, we made our way to the Oschersleben circuit, the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben circuit as it's known in full, the German circuit, really proving to be the test of many, and many a driver coming unstuck at the tricky fast-flowing circuit, and Mark Johnson in the bronze class there having a difficult day, whereas other drivers up and down the field found ins and outs, and indeed some had privacy versus others not being able to make it work out. But of course, it's not just about one round, it's about all 12 rounds. And then before that, we had the first half of the season, and we continue to wind on back. Round number 6 was of course our second feature race round at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya on the 23rd of October, and there in the darkness, of course with the circuit lights on effect as well, only limited lighting, and also the headlights of our drivers, we saw plenty of battling around the 90 minutes of racing action, and many a driver going side by side. It's the opening sequence, of course, turns 1 through to 4, and the gold class, no stranger to the danger of battling side by side, but making it work every single time, and it was brilliant to see. Before that, before we went to Spain in round number 5, we were in the United Kingdom for the Snetterton 300 circuit. On the 16th of October, we did see many a driver go off the circuit there at Snetterton, a very tricky circuit in fast machinery of the GT3 class, more common for touring car class racing and Ginetta Cup style racing. The Snetterton circuit really confounded a number of drivers, but those who were able to keep it off of the grass did very well, and indeed that really set the tone of the racing there. But in round number 4, prior to that, we were in the Californian state for the Laguna Seca Raceway, and now on the 9th of October, we saw many a driver had to contend with the tricky situation that is the corkscrew chicane. But it wasn't just about that infamous chicane, it was also about the rest of the banked corners, and many drivers there found themselves falling off the circuit, but not Joe Zarkos, who pulled off an absolutely brilliant run in the Platinum class. And then back in round number 3 at the roller coaster ride of Road Atlanta in the United States as well, but in the state of Georgia, there we saw on the 2nd of October, it was all about being brave on the brakes and smart with the draft, but also being bold with the throttle pedal through the sweeping S's in order to pull off a result. And indeed there in the silver class, it was a tricky one for many a driver, with a good number of our silver drivers not having the result they necessarily wanted, but also at the same time remembering that again, it's only one round out of 12. But then in the second round, winding back all the way to the 25th of September, it was the Dreaming Motegi circuit where we kicked off our first sprint race of the season in Japan. Our first visit to Japan, and interestingly enough, we of course returned to Japan with another sprint. And at the Motegi circuit, well, we did see plenty of battle in action, but also drama early on in the race where a number of silver drivers out qualifying their peers in the gold class, and well, Chris Edisford in particular falling by the wayside after a major incident into turns 1 and 2, seeing him drop down the order like a stone and not be able to recover as much as he perhaps wanted. And we opened up all the way back on the 18th of September at Road America, and there in the season opener in the feature race, it was all about strategy and keeping your cool with the tyres wearing down and avoiding making any major mistakes. Mistakes were made by some, and of course the infamous one perhaps in the silver class, the battle between David Larson and Matthew Whitefoot being settled on strategy, with Larson having to come into the pits on the lead of the class on the penultimate lap, or indeed going on to the final lap we should say, and seeing him denied the win with it going to Whitefoot. But coming to today, it is the 13th of November 2022 of course, and we are at Suzuka today, and after today we will be making our way to the Norwegian circuit of Rudskogen on the 20th of November in another live broadcast, the third feature race of the season. And there at the Rudskogen circuit, a circuit that is new to iRacing, indeed the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, where we see our drivers take onto the tarmac for the first time. And well, what a tricky circuit it is going to be, and more coverage on that in a week of course. And then we'll be making our way on the 27th of November to the Indianapolis circuit for our final sprint race round of the season in round number 11. And of course the Indianapolis circuit, a famous circuit in the United States for oval racing, but also for its road course circuit, and it'll be an interesting one there, with the circuit proving to be very tricky with a large number of sweeping corners and also heavy braking zones, before we make our way to the season finale, our fourth and final feature race round on the calendar in round number 12. And that will be brought to you live as well, and that will be at the Austrian circuit of the Red Bull Ring, a brilliant circuit to wrap up the season at, given the fact there's plenty of straightaways, plenty of heavy braking zones, and that means there's going to be overtaking opportunities aplenty, and also fuel saving is going to be a key ingredient to success if you're looking to be smart with the strategy. But will drivers decide to do that? Of course, in the last season finale back in season 7, we saw a Road Atlanta. It was all about fuel saving versus outright pace, and in the end it seemed as though outright pace was going to be the key in the rivalry between Sam Congreve and Cy Anthony in the Platinum class. Will we see a similar rivalry appear again there in the season finale? Well, we'll have to wait and find out, but that is going into next month. But with our schedule looked at, let's come to our circuit for today, and it is the Suzuka International Racing Course, located near the town of Suzuka in the Mie Prefecture of Japan. This 17-corner circuit, of course most known for its figure of 8 layout, one of only 2 FIA Grade 1 listed circuits with a figure of 8 layout, and you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, thank you to them as always for the brilliant circuit maps. This is a circuit that is more than just its appearance. It is also a circuit which is about testing the ultimate performance of a chosen piece of machinery. Now that is actually embedded within the history of the circuit, given the fact it was opened in 1962 as dedicated to being a Honda test track, we should say, and recently being used to test the new Honda Civic Type R, of course breaking the front engine front-wheel drive lap record around Suzuka, and currently trying to break the record around the Nürburgring Nordschleife loop. But this circuit, designed by John Hugenholtz, has gradually become more and more commonplace on both domestic and international calendars, expanding all the way into the world of Formula 1, Intercontinental, GT Championship, you name it, it's raced here, and also MotoGP. But there's also been drama over the course of the years, not just in terms of championship drama, but indeed incidents as well, and many a revision has been made to the circuit over the last 3 decades to make it safer for drivers and spectators alike. But the key thing about this circuit is, with its 17 corners, it's made up of 4 unique sectors, and all 4 sectors will manage to test a different aspect of the car. When our drivers make their way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1, they'll be heading into sector 1, where they charge into a trail braking zone through turn 1 into the heavier braking zone at turn 2, where they'll get onto the anchors there before sweeping the way out of turn 2 and powering into the S's of turns 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. A testing sequence of S-curves which will see our drivers have to focus on the weight transfer of the car and managing their balance of the throttle. Do it right and they'll find themselves charging the way through turn number 7 into sector 2 as they make the way on towards the Degners. Degner 1 at turn number 8 and Degner 2 at turn number 9, and as they make the way through the double right complex there, it'll be a test of will and bravery as they look to hop, skip and jump on the brakes and onto the curves into Degner 1 before coming harder down on the brake pedal for turn number 9 at Degner 2. Now that corner correctly, then they make their way out of sector 2 under the overpass and up towards the hairpin at turn number 11. And something I recently found out is known as Kobayashi Corner, because in the 2010 Japanese Grand Prix, I may not be correct on the year, but Kobayashi, in fact I think it was a bit earlier than that, I think it was in fact the 2006 Japanese Grand Prix, Kobayashi made a whole multitude of overtakes at the turn 11 hairpin, preceded of course by the kick at turn number 10, and in making those overtakes I think he made almost 10 in total at the the hairpin. That's why he's got the name given to the corner, his name being given to the corner by fans and spectators, and it's happened to stick. But as they make their way out of the slides corner on the circuit at turn number 11, they'll then cover through the long right-hander at turn number 12, flat out there all the way out to spoon curve at turn 13. A double left complex at turn number 13, a fast flowing left-hander, followed up by a slower, more gradual left-hander. They'll look to get the best possible exit out the second part of 13 before making their way down the back straight, over the overpass bridge and onwards towards 130R. The corner which requires bravery and nerves of steel as you go flat out into left-hander at turn number 14. Get it right and then you'll go into the heavy braking zone of Casio Triangle Chicane at turns 15 through to 17. The right-left-right combination being and almost a bus stop effectively chicane at turns 15 and 16, hitting hard on the brakes, going all the way down to the lowest gears of the car, but attacking those curves and then making their way out. Our drivers will go flat out through turn number 17 as close as possible to do so before heading to the end of the lap and doing it all over again. And well, with our four sectors there and the sector split line, of course, for sector 3 into sector 4 coming just before 130R. That's why this is the ultimate test of a car in Japan, for the simple reason there's a little bit of everything, with the latter two sectors being a test of the car's performance at high speed cornering, but also being bold on the brakes and oval straight line acceleration, whereas the first two sectors are more focused on manoeuvrability and technicality at medium to low speed. But as we now look from our circuit map back to our live pictures here, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. And as we can see, we have got qualifying coming up. Qualifying will be occurring in approximately 6.5 minutes time, and that will be a closed qualifying session where all of our drivers will go onto an isolated instance of the circuit reserved just for them, and they'll be able to put in their laps. They'll have 4 flying laps or 15 minutes, whichever one concludes first, and after that we'll be setting the grid for our one and only race on the calendar for tonight, and that is our sprint race. Of course, 40 minutes with a mandatory pit stop, much like in the official VRS series, and who will come out on top of in their respective classes over the duration of the racing, we'll have to wait and find out. But whilst we are waiting to go racing, of course, we look to a familiar face, no stranger to enjoying the racing at Suzuka, and of course, been off an absolutely brilliant result last season in Season 7. It is SimRacing's Sam Congreve here as he makes his way into spoon curve, and will the Mercedes driver sticking with the Mercedes in this season? It has been a season when the Mercedes has not quite been on the pace of a good number of other cars within the class, particularly the Porsche 911. You can see there the top 10 dominated by the Porsche currently, and that's the current iRacing balance of performance, which has already seen the Porsche be the #1 flavour of GT3 machine over the course of this season. But as we see Sam Congreve making his way through 130R, of course he'll try and prove a point that the Mercedes is still strong and do everything he can in order to take the fight to the Porsches. And indeed, one of his peers in the Platinum class is doing the same as well, and that is Carl McGurk here, who we see making his way across the timeline to go on to another lap very shortly in the UKSimRacing driver here in the 888 car, heading down towards turn number 1, and currently the fastest car that's not a Porsche on this grid in this final practice session. But it's not just about our Platinum drivers, we also look to the likes of John Eddowes here, making his way through spoon curve right now in the Tiki SimSport tyre machine, and I had the opportunity to catch up with John in the build-up to tonight, and so you may notice on the BMW M4 that they're running a special livery dedicated to Japan on the car. And indeed, if you look down the side of the car, you will be able to see, and well, I'm going to say this here and some may ridicule me for it, but I do believe that is none other than Tiki-chan on the side of the car, and indeed that is the Tiki SimSport logo converted into an anime character. And as we do see Eddowes making his way on through, where's the Casio Triangle Chicane, I think this is an absolutely wonderful thing whereby the team actually got an artist on board to paint their logo as an anime character to embody Tiki SimSport. And as he makes his way on down now towards turn number 1, the team really on board here and represented in Japan, and we look forward to seeing how Tiki SimSport Tar and their main outfit of Tiki SimSport themselves, albeit I think they're actually equivalent outfits and brother and sister outfits, so I should really say get on here tonight. Indeed, Tiki SimSport and Tiki SimSport Tar provide us with plenty of favourable racing action over the course of the season so far. As we look from our gold driver here to Chris Edison making his way around. He hasn't been on the circuit for the last couple of rounds, but back tonight in full force, the UKSimRacing driver, currently P18 overall, and the silver class driver P4 within the class, going into this practice session so far. 4 minutes left. How can Edison get on tonight? Of course, he was one of the strongest drivers in terms of pace early on when we visited Japan back in round number 2, but didn't work out for him. Can he make it work tonight? That will be the challenge. But speaking of the challenge, of course, fresh off a strong performance last time out at the Circuit of the Americas, can Mark Johnson here today pull off a win in the bronze class that will see him start to build up an advantage, with drop scores now coming into effect? And of course, it is the three-way fight in the bronze championship between Johnson in what is the number 11 Porsche and also Daniel Pays in what is the number 8 BMW M4. And Pays last time out looked to be the driver who was on course to take the win at the Circuit of the Americas, but it wasn't to work out with a rather contentious battle with some drivers in other classes earlier on. They had to retire the car due to damage picked up, and Pays back today and looking to carry on from where he left off in Texas. But also, let's not count out Darren Sharples here as well. As you can see in the 777 Mercedes, he's also a contender for the Bronze Championship. The three of them very close together at the moment, and it could go any which way between them, as they've got plenty of foes and adversaries within their class and also other classes out on circuit. And Matthew Whitefoot here being the adversary who focuses on strategy and consistency above all else, and currently running inside P3, or inside the top three in P3 we should say, in the Silver Class Championship. Can the 104 Privateer here in the BMW M4 pull off a result today that'll see him jump right back up into the fight versus where's David Larson and also Stephen Masters? Well, to be fair, I think Larson, we're not 100% sure if that David Larson is here at the moment, and there he is making his way out the pit lane in the sim for the Esports White BMW M4 in the 306 machine. But the story has been really about Masters. Stephen Masters pulling off an absolutely dominated string of results since his switch to the Silver Class. And well, is he in attendance tonight? That is the question. I think Masters is. In fact, he is currently P4 on the overall time sheets here, and Masters right now, well, goodness me, he was right up there at Kota, and now he's right up here at Silverstone. Not Silverstone, goodness me, it's Suzuka. Get Silverstone out of my mind. They both begin with an S, but they're at different sides of the world. And as Masters makes his way out of deck the 2, making his way up towards turn 10 and 11 here, you imagine the number 14 driver's really trying to put the Silver Championship to bed before long as he makes his way out of the turn 11 hairpin. And whilst we are waiting to go racing here, we just want to say that if you do tune in on a regular basis and you are thinking about potentially giving back to the UKSimRacing community, or thinking how can you potentially do so, did you know there's a way to do so through our affiliates, and this does not require you to contribute any major payment with regards to the community as a whole. Because simply put, UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real world motorsport companies, including Swello and Meta, Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you head to our website, which is uksimracing.co.uk today, and it'll appear on your screen very shortly, and in fact there it is, the site under maintenance at the moment, is still ready available for use. You'll see that on the top left hand side of the website there is a link called Discount/Affiliate Links, and if you are to click on that link, you'll be taken to the following page, and you can see the logos of our affiliates here: Race Anywhere, Demon Tweak, Swello and Meta, Sim Racing Coaching, and also Amazon. And if you do click on any of those logo images, you will be taken to pages on the respective affiliate sites where you can make purchases through our affiliates, which result in discounts for you. There'll be discounted purchases for you, and a kickback to us will go as a result of those purchases. And given that we are a non-profit organisation at UKSimRacing, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series. Indeed, through the funding, it has enabled us to continue running the GT3 League going into Season 8, and we've got plenty to come as we make our way into 2023. And well, it was recently revealed all the leagues that are in planning and in motion. We've got at least 5 leagues planned, including the continuation of the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, and plenty more. And indeed, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing, and we appreciate every penny. And additionally, some of our affiliates provide discount codes which are available in the UKSimRacing Discord. So if you're not part of our Discord, then why not join today in order to be able to capitalise on those discount codes as well. But making our way back to the circuit now, our drivers getting ready to go into qualifying, and indeed none other than Daniel Dan Weber here, the privateer in the Ford GT, the rare car here, but he's trying to make it work in the gold class. The checkered flag is out on practice. We head into qualifying, and it will be 15 minutes of qualifying here. All of our drivers on the tarmac in their own isolated qualifying instances, and who will come out on pole by the end of it? Well, let's find out. But as we do see Daniel Dan Weber here making his way down the pit lane, getting himself all set and nicely settled in, heading on down. Well, what's going to be the trick here to get a good lap at Suzuka? Well, arguably, there is no one-stop trick in order to be able to be successful at Suzuka. And the reason why, simply put, is because of the fact that you have to focus on nailing your lap every corner, every sector. As we said earlier when we gave the overview of this circuit, this is a test circuit which is focused on stressing every part as possible with regards to your chosen choice of machinery. So if your car's strong in terms of brakes and power, and it's not strong in the corners, then you will suffer as a result in sectors 1 and 2. Conversely, if your car's great through the corners but it lacks top end speed, you'll start to experience difficulty in the run all the way down and around the straightaways, particularly on that back straight heading up towards where's 130R. So therefore our drivers really really need to get the most out of their driving style and their choice of machinery. Of course, this is an open setup series, so our drivers have picked their car for their preferred driving style, and they go with the setup which they elect to put on the car. Of course, some of them working with pre-packaged setups, others deciding to go completely with raw setups they've created themselves, and far in between, and therefore it really comes down to man, woman and machine as they make their way on around this circuit today, and who will come out on top. Well, it'll be about the driver who's the most composed and can maximise the strengths of their car around here and minimise the weaknesses as much as possible. And as we do see here, David Larson making his way up towards the hairpin at turn at number 11 right now. We're expecting the BMW M4 to be quite strong here over. It's a very stable platform for a GT3 car. Of course, the Porsche is likely to be the strongest here given the pace it's showing, but as we do see Larson making his way through turn number 12, we look to Darren Sharples here in the bronze class Mercedes. He makes his way up towards 130R and gets himself set to go on to his first flying lap. But in terms of our choice of flying laps today, we're going to be riding on board with none other than Joe Newman in what is the GoldsimRacing Porsche 911 as he heads out to the final corner and on to his first flying lap of this qualifying session. So making his way down towards turn number 1 as we bring the dashboard up on the right hand side of the screen and heading all the way down towards the braking zone here. You'll see getting ready to go into the trail braking corner of 1, looking to his left for his brake marker, using the marshal's post on the left hand side, coming down 2 gears to 4th before dropping to 3rd and turning to turn number 2. A little bit deep there, understeering wide of the apex, brings it nicely on forward, and as he now makes his way into turns 3 and 4, rolling from the left into right, collected and calm as he now gets back on the power and makes his way into turn number 5, balance to the throttle here as he now brings the car to the right hand side, brakes into turn number 6. Does he drop again? No, he stays in 3rd, takes a V-shape apex before bringing the car to the right side for turn 7, balances the throttle and then goes, puts in full throttle and makes his way all the way through the long left-hander in towards sector 2. Degner 1 awaits here, looks to his left for his 50-metre board, gets on the brakes there, drops the gear to 4th gear, and now Degner 2 awaits. He gets back onto the brakes once again, down to the 2nd gear, powers out 71 miles an hour on the apex and heads up towards turn number 11. Through the right-hander who goes shortly at 10 and straightening the steering wheel as soon as he gets ready to go onto the brakes here, down all the way to 1st gear, and as he now makes his way out to the hairpin, heads up towards turn number 12, completely flat out here, and he gets a breather as spike, but he's got to keep the car nice and tight initially to the turn 12 apex before letting the car gradually come out a little bit into the centre of the road and then bring it back over to the right here to head into Spoon Curve. Looks at the escape road on the right hand side, finds it and gets onto the brakes, down 2 gears to 3rd gear. Some drivers will stay in full depending on their choice of car and setup, and as he makes his way through the second part of Spoon, going over the rise now into the depression as he's full throttle all the way down the back straight, heading down what is effectively the west start line grid as he makes his way towards 130R, and as he gets ready to go into the left-hander, let's listen in. Does he commit on the throttle? Completely committed there, no lift whatsoever. You love to hear it. And as he gets onto the brakes there at Casio Triangle, the 100-metre board on the left-hand side, coming all the way down to 1st gear, clearing 15, clearing 16, right in the curve. And as he comes through turn number 17, it's a smart lap, but what's it going to be as he heads to the timeline here for Joe Newman? It's been a brilliant lap to set off his proceedings, and he crosses the line, and well, it is going to be a 57.691, a nice lap as he brings his way on down towards turn number 1 once again, and we clear the dashboard there, but plenty of times coming in from our drivers, and right now what we can see there, Newman, Pratt and Tilling separated by only 600ths, if that, from P3 to P5 overall. All drivers, of course, competing in what is there, the gold class. That's absolutely tight in terms of timings, and Daniel Dan Weaver not too far behind it either, only a further 2.5 tenths off. This is going to be a close qualifying session, and qualifying is going to be critical here, given that overtaking opportunities are aplenty at Suzuka, but of course being in the draft of another car, particularly through the S's of turns 3 through to 7, that causes a nasty front end wash or loss of downforce on the car, to be more explicit, and that could compromise a run for a driver here, particularly if they're running a high downforce setup. So right now it's all to play for in this qualifying session, and it's not just in the gold class that this story occurs, it's also in the silver class here, with David Larson currently going fastest of his silver class peers on what is there, a 158.20. We've yet to see lap times coming from Cranley Swash and also Masters, which may shake things up to a degree, but as we see Larson heading on around, he's only 2 tenths faster than Colin Patterson, as we do see the TT Simsport driver here in the 737 machine making his way through the turn 11 hairpin and heading in towards turn number 12, and as he comes on through, Patterson right now doing a good job so far But what about in the Platinum class, where it's Austin William Campbell who parks up here, and he's going to jump back to the pit. Meanwhile, Damien Lobbett still making his way on around here, and as he comes out of 11 and through towards 12, the gap between Campbell and Lobbett is only half a tenth. That's how close it is for pole position overall, and to be on that #1 spot in the Platinum class. Of course, we do have some drivers who've yet to put in times within the Platinum class, including Jonathan Hitchen. And where is Hitchen, I hear you ask? Well, here he is making his way through Degner 2, and Jonathan Hitchen on paper is the fastest of drivers, although he's had an invalidated lap there as he jumps back to the pits, going wide at Degner 2. And could Hitchen here be becoming unfounded with regards to the track limit, Stuart, as he makes his way up towards turn #1? Well, he doesn't want that, of course, because he starts towards the back of the grid. It's only going to hurt his ability to extend his championship lead further. But what about in the bronze class, I hear you ask? Well, here is Darren Sharples making his way into the S's right now, and as he comes on through here with the qualifying session almost half complete, Sharples right now only 200ths off a Johnson, and the gap between them is so tight you could cut it with a knife. And as they make the way on around right now, we can see Daniel Pays meanwhile a little bit further back by 3/10 of a Sharples. But again, these three major protagonists in the bronze class championship battle so close together, and you absolutely want this going deeper and deeper into the championship as a spectator. But as the drivers right now, this puts so much pressure on the leading driver in the championship class, particularly Johnson in the bronze class, who always seems to have had a bit of an advantage in qualifying, but not right now. That advantage is nowhere to be seen. It's not even a tenth, and that means he's got to be right on the form. But meanwhile, speaking of being on form, he's jumped up to P4 after putting his first valid time of the session. It's Stephen Masters who takes silver pole position provisionally by a margin of, oh goodness me, versus David Larson. That's a margin of half a second, and he's only 4/10 off of the overall pole. And I think right now, Tilling, Pratt and Newman behind will be looking at this and thinking, okay, now how do we potentially dethrone a silver driver from being on that second row ahead of us? And particularly Tilling right now, who wants to do everything he can in order to be able to open up a little bit more of an advantage in this qualifying session and put at least one grid spot between himself and Pratt behind, who is just a little bit ahead of him on circuit, albeit in the closed instances of the circuit. But this qualifying session continues to intensify. Now, is anybody going faster at the moment? Well, we can't see anybody improving currently by a significant margin, but we are keeping our eyes on the timing screens. But meanwhile, speaking of a driver here who may wish to improve a little bit more, it is Tyson Belenda in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo as he makes his way down the back straight. As we see there, Yep making his way up towards P4, and that's Richard Yep there in the Platinum class jumping up to P4 on a 57.463. Meanwhile, Belenda here making his way down towards what is the Casio Triangle chicane, coming on through the right into left, and as the number 2 driver here sipes his way through between the two apexes. What's it going to be this time around? Hasn't really improved too much in the first half of the lap, slightly improved in the second half of the lap. As he comes across the line, he's going to go for another one here. He does not decide to move over towards the inside to shorten the run to the timeline and try to set a personal best. Meanwhile, speaking of setting personal best, it's a personal best and a new pole position lap provisional in the gold class for Joshua Pratt here as he moves to 57.52, and that puts him now a 10th clear of Tilling. Now, will Tilling respond as Pratt jumps to the pit? And we see Tilling making his way on around here. 6 minutes still left in this qualifying session. A good number of drivers still got at least one lap on the board, if not more, to use. So therefore, we could see a few more improve as Austin William Campbell has come into the pits. He heads back on out. Pratt's in the pits right now. I suspect there will be one more lap there for Pratt before he's concluded his qualifying session. But most drivers right now really having to focus hard. And as we look to Mark Collicott here, in the DCW racing machine, we can see here in its stark yellow-blue contrasting colours, he's currently in P5 in the silver class, P18 overall, putting in a good qualifying session here as he makes his way on down and around. And whilst nobody's able to really take the run as he goes a bit deep into Spoon and has to reset to the pit lane, and Valenda continues here after what has been a reasonable start to his qualifying lap. He has improved in subsector 2, so that is the run through the S. He's improved quite considerably compared to his previous best. But meanwhile, a big name trying to put a lap in is Jonathan Hitchen, and as he makes his way on through here, this lap has been valid so far. He goes a bit deep into Casio, but as he makes his way coming out of the chicane and heading towards the line, he brings it over to the right hand side to cut the line. As he crosses that timeline, then what's it going to be for Jonathan Hitchen? Well, he takes provisional pole on a 56.874. He's left it late in the day, but he's got it done, and that's by 3.5 tenths over Austin William Campbell, and that is the only 56 we have seen in this qualifying session so far. We've still got a chance to see some 57 56s, but now that I think that Hitchen has found his momentum and his rhythm, he's only going to go faster on what will be one of his last laps in this session. Meanwhile, Cy Anthony jumps up to P2 in the Platinum class and over on a 57.185, only what is 200ths faster than Austin William Campbell, so it's all to play for to be on that front row alongside Hitchen. And right now, Cy Anthony coming out of left field here with a very strong lap and continuing to try and push the tempo. Meanwhile, in the bronze class, it is still Johnson ahead of Sharples and Pays in the P27 through to P29 slots overall. We have Reggie Greenfield as well, who has come into the pit lane. He's decided not to go again, I do believe. And Jeremy Grand right now and James Connolly have yet to set lap times. And here is Jeremy Grand as he makes his way through Degner 2 and heads up towards the hairpin of turn number 11. Now as he makes his way on up here, I think for Grant, it's all about trying to nail this lap as best as possible, given the fact he has not got a lap on the board so far, and therefore it's going to be critical for him as he goes into the very end of this qualifying session, because he'll want to be close to at least Whitefoot and Valenda, if not further up the order. But as he makes his way on around here, we do have an opportunity very shortly to speak to Reggie Greenfield, who's currently parked up, I do believe, in the pit lane, and as he joins us in what is the interview room very shortly here, as Reggie Greenfield now joins us in the bronze class. Reggie, looks like it has not been quite the qualifying session you've wanted here today. P32 overall, and what is effectively their P4 in the bronze class. Are you happy with your qualifying performance? Has it not worked out?
No, actually, you know what? Just did the 10-hour. I'm comfortable. I've changed cars. Comfortable with the car. I feel like I'm getting it around safe. I don't have the same pace as the quick guys, but no, I think I'm looking at having a good, safe race, and I think if I can bring it home clean, I've got a good chance of maybe getting a podium in bronze. We'll see. The other guys in bronze aren't that far ahead of me. They're only 0.2 up, so in my practice I had a little bit quicker of a time, so we'll see what happens. Gonna have fun knowing the new car running the Merc now instead of the BMW.
So switching from the cars and of course competing in the 10-hour Suzuka, what has been the main thing you've had to adapt to in the space of time? Because of course a 10-hour race, absolutely strenuous. Now you're going into a 40-minute sprint, different tempo, different car. What's the thing you focused on most?
Probably just pushing things just a little bit more. Obviously in the endurance events you want to sit back and being safe over the course of the whole race is going to be really important, whereas here you are wanting to push a little bit. It's a sprint. You got to try and get the most you can out of the car in a short period of time. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, going to try not to impede the quick guys. I look at Jonathan Hitchen up there, and he's what, at a 56.8. So obviously that's almost 3 seconds faster lap. I expect I'll probably see him pass me once during the race.
Oh, indeed. Well, we wish you the best of luck, Reggie, and go for that podium. Try and get into the fight versus Pays, Sharples and Johnson. You never know what can happen at Suzuka, but we wish you all the best.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
So here and there from Reggie Greenfield, who whilst he's not had perhaps the lap that puts him right up close to the likes of Pays, Sharples and Johnson, still only 2 tenths off by his own observation, and that means he is going to be into the fight there with regards to that potential bronze podium. Of course, James Connolly not setting a lap, so we'll have to wait and see how he factors into the proceedings as well. But as we see Nathan Foster parked up here, we do have an opportunity to just very quickly grab a word with Martin Tilling, I do believe, as this qualifying session is coming to a close. And well, as we do grab Martin Tilling very quickly into the interview room. Martin, only 30 seconds, but qualifying looks good. P4 in the gold class, P12 overall, but you're behind one of your rivals of Joshua Pratt. Are you happy with qualifying?
It was tough out there. I was struggling with my tyre warm-up, getting in that right window. Just didn't come off when I was trying to push. Just a little bit of understeer in certain sections. It cost me my lap. Only really got one good lap in, so I'd say it's more of a reasonable. It wasn't my slowest, wasn't my fastest, but I probably could have done better.
And given the feels though perhaps you could have done a bit better in qualifying, now all your sights turn to the race as we transition over to the grid. In fact, we'll let you concentrate on that. Good luck in the race, Martin. Thank you for joining us very quickly.
Thank you, Paul. I'll join you afterwards.
So here and there from Martin Tilling, but let's take you through the grid for the purposes of today's sprint race. So they line up as follows in round number 9, the GT3 League Season 8, brought to you by UKSimRacing, hosted on iRacing. Jonathan Hitchen taking pole position with 56.874 in the Platinum class, and overall for Symphony Esports White, joined by Symphony Esports White's Damien Lobbett. It's a lockout for the team on the front row there. On row number 2 is Cy Anthony for Symphony Esports Black, joined by the privateer of Austin William Campbell. Then Daniel Thomas and Richard Yep there from DCW Racing line up on the third row. The BWT Motorsport driver looking to take the fight to the front 2 rows, no doubt about it. Stephen Masters, the silver pole sitter, P7, the privateer, in an absolute flyer of a qualifying lap, which we've come to typically see from the silver driver over the course of the season so far, and Sam Congreve alongside him for Simam Racing there, P8. Then it's Joshua Pratt and Daniel Dan Weber line up together on row number 5, the 2 gold drivers, with Joshua Pratt taking pole position in the gold class ahead of the Ford GT of Daniel Dan Weber, and we look forward to seeing how that can take the fight to Pratt's Porsche over the course of the duration. Sam Sherwood and Martin Tillin line up on row number 6 together, and as we heard briefly from Tillin there, not quite happy with the qualifying performance. What can he pull off in the race? Then on row number 7, it's Carl McGrath from UKSimRacing, joined by Simam Racing's Joe Newman, followed by Nathan Foster and Peter Cox on row number 8. Darryl Norquette and Alex Hill on row number 9. Alex Hill having a weaker qualifying session compared to his championship rivals, but we know he goes strong in the races typically. Chris Eddersford there behind him on row number 10, starting off row 10 in P19, the UKSimRacing driver, ahead of David Larson from Symphony Esports White. Then outside the top 20, we have Colin Patterson, P21, starting off row 11 for Tiki Simsport Tower, joined by DCW Racing's Mark Collicott, P22. Casper Brotner and John Ellows make up row number 12 there. The Tiki Simsport Tower driver not having the strongest qualifying performance, but again one to watch out for in the race. On row 13, we have Tyson Belenda and Matthew Whitefoot in one of his weakest qualifying sessions over the course of the season, particularly in the second half. And then Jeremy Grant and Mark Johnson line up together on row 14, with Mark Johnson there taking pole position in the bronze class. We have Darren Sharples and Daniel Pace just behind P29, P30 on the 15th row, with Billy Mann and Sean Cranny Swash on row 16. And in our final row consists of Reggie Greenfield and James Connolly. They line up together on row number 17, P33, P34. But without further ado, as we look down to the circuit here, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to go racing, and it will be Jonathan Hitchen who takes us to the green very shortly for 40 minutes of sprint racing action here at Suzuka. And can he get the flying start and break away as he makes his way into the chicane? Let's find out. And he immediately goes, coming out to Casio Triangle. We're away, and it's green flag racing here for round number 9 as Hitchen takes our drives on through, and down towards turn number 1 they come. And as they make the way on down the start-finish straight here, look at Cy Anthony battling hard with Damien Lobbett in the long run as they make the way into the braking zone. Also Daniel Thomas there, who has to defend versus Jeff as they make the way into turn 2. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see that Darryl Norquette falling backwards a little bit versus Alex Hill. Hill gaining the advantage, but where all the drives are concertina through the Casio Triangle chicane, it's led to some drives falling a bit further back. But meanwhile, yep, still side by side with Thomas as they come through the S's. That's into turn 5, and as they battle side by side here into 6, well, Thomas has got the inside line, and look at Sam Congreve and the Mercedes trying to pick up a place here, but not able to quite get the cut back into 7. But as they make the way through the long left-hander, you can see that yep, right now a little bit on the outside, a bit outcast and not holding the pace. And Congreve here trying to use the Mercedes muscle to come on through, but he can't find it. As meanwhile, Carl McGurk finds his way out the inside there, slightly off camera versus Martin Tillin, and the Platinum driver gains an overall position as they make the way out of Dana 2. But still a little bit further up, Stephen Masters battling here with Pratt as they make the way into the hairpin, and Masters defends hard as they make the way through the left-hander, and Pace, I'm hearing, has had an instant further down the road. But as they drivers make the way through the hairpin, we can see many now 2 by 2 as they come on through, and as they make the way into turn number 12, Daniel Pace has had to jump to the pits, and Billy Mann as well. We'll find out what exactly has happened between them a little bit later on, but as our drivers come charging on through turn number 12 and up towards forward. Oh, goodness me, and somebody getting it so very wrong, and that is the Ford GT of Weber, and also what is the Porsche 911 there, I believe, I'm not sure, but it's by the UKSimRacing Porsche, and they've come together in the run into Spoon Curve, and we'll find out about that. I think that was Masters caught up in the instant, the silver leader, and this is going to open things up to a degree, as meanwhile Sam Sherwood here running P9 right now overall with P2 in the gold class. Sherwood has gained 2 places since the start, and behind Tilling here having to defend versus Carl McGurk as they make the way through Casio. Well, that's just 1 lap of racing, and we've got plenty to go as they make the way down and around for lap number 2. So after 1 lap, it is Jonathan Hitchen who leads, followed by Cy Anthony P2, Damien Lobbett in P3, losing the place assigned to the at the start. Austin William Campbell P4, followed by Daniel Thomas P5. Then we've got Richard Jebb in P6, followed by Sam Congreve P7. They're all platinum drivers. Your gold leaders behind in P8 are Joshua Pratt, followed by Sam Sherwood P9. One of the bigger gainers in the top 10 at the start, followed by Martin Till in P10. And then we have Carl McGuirt, best of the rest in P11. Your silver leader, meanwhile, is Chris Eddersford, who right now running in P17 has picked up the pieces that have been lost by Stephen Masters after Eddersford's had a great start to his race. And in the bronze class, it's Mark Johnson running in P27 with Darren Sharples just behind him. And then Reggie Greenfield, he's up into the podium places. Like he said in his pre-race interview, he's made the jump. Now, can he make it stick with James Conley a little bit further back? But speaking of further back, we'll take a look further back through the race replay footage shortly for what exactly happened to Daniel Dan Weaver and Stephen Masters, and also the incident between Mann and Pays. We do believe there was an incident between the two of them. In fact, we've got the incident coming up now. So this was only moments ago, and it was Daniel Pays making his way up, and well, coming on through turn number 7. Oh, goodness me! And contact of Billy Mann, who was going very slowly indeed. Now, we're not exactly sure what happened there, but Mann from BRM Racing was a little bit off the pace. I think that was a bit of a misinterpretation of how much space was available between the pair there. And meanwhile, as we return to the live pictures, Cy Anthony has gone off at Spoon Curve. We just returned to see that, and he's going to drop a plethora of places as he makes his way on down the back straight here. And further behind, we see Darren Orkett there stepping a little bit wide as they make the way up towards 130R. And well, side by side right now, making their way into the aforementioned corner, Carl McGurk and Martin Tilling. But in the end, Tilling backing out then, letting Carl McGurk take the race in line, not to be compromised, of course, as they make the way down towards Casio Triangle once again. And into turns 15, 16, 17 they go. But meanwhile, we also take a look back very shortly at what happened between Masters and Weaver. But before we do, I think we've got a couple of little latency issues for some drivers a bit further down the order, because we have got drivers jumping up and down quite significantly at the moment, although we get a bit of clarity about what exactly is going on there shortly as we see our drivers making their way across that timeline once again here and on to the next lap. But meanwhile, Mark Johnson here finds himself gaining more places. He heads down towards turn number 1, and as he makes his way on down and right now, looking up the inside, can't quite find it there versus what is Matthew Whiteford, but Johnson now starting to up the tempo as meanwhile side by side here making the way through the S's. That's Collicott versus Eddowes as they make the way in towards turn number 5, and as they come on through the left into right, we've got a driver off ahead, a bit of contact between Collicott and Eddowes there. I think there's just a bit of side contact, and off circuit they're returning. That is Billy Mann, who is now lapped down after the incident with Pays on the opening lap, and as they make the way through turn number 7 for the third time of asking here, well, right now Collicott hot on the heels of Eddowes, and these two battling for overall position, with Collicott being the silver driver, Eddowes being a gold driver, but there's nothing between them so far as they make the way through the right hander of Degler 2 and up towards the hairpin. But as they come on through here, we take a look back at what happened between Masters and Weaver as they made the way into Spoon Curve. Well, this was only moments ago, and Masters here under pressure from Daniel Dan Weaver as they made the way into the breakers. Oh, goodness me! And I don't know if you saw it there, but Masters stepping out onto the grass slightly under braking into the first part of Spoon, and the car just simply steering its way into the path of Daniel Dan Weaver. I don't think there was any malice meant by it. Well, there definitely wasn't, in my opinion, and Masters being caught out, but being able to resume comfortably. Meanwhile, for Daniel Dan Weaver, it has not worked out, and he drops all the way down the order, and well, that's an unfortunate one. That's going to be a difficult one for the stewards to pick the way on through, but I think there's Stephen Masters, just one little mistake which would have cost him very dearly. In the end, he imparted the mistake onto Weaver, who just happened to be there at the worst possible time, and that's the way it works out. But as we return to live pictures, we've got a lot of smoke here going into what is Casio. Now, has somebody got it wrong at 130R? I think somebody, oh my goodness, and Mark Johnson, well, I thought somebody's got it wrong. Somebody has further back, but Mark Johnson spins coming out of 130R, and the car's into the wall, and I think that's Daryl Norquette who's stuck in the wall coming out of 130R. Well, the corner has claimed 2 drivers this time around, and what exactly has happened? Well, as we take a look back here, this was Darren Norquette only moments ago in the 86 UKSimRacing Racing Forces machine, and the car just stepped out there on the curbing as he came out of the corner, and then Mark Johnson just a bit later comes on through, and well, there I think, oh goodness me, and Darren Norquette, well, we didn't quite see that part. Mark Johnson reacting to Norquette being slightly onto the road there, and Johnson in return heading into the time ban. He's not going to be happy about that one, there's no doubt about it. But well, as Mark Johnson and also Darren Norquette both make their way into the pit lane for repair work, you can see here that as they now use their fast repair and make the way on out, it's not their race, but what this does mean is that Reggie Greenfield right now finds himself in the unexpected position in the Tiki Sim Sport machine position of leading in the bronze class in P22 overall. And if this continues, well, my goodness, right now, this is going to be a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one for the driver in the Mercedes as he makes his way into turn number 11. But as we look from him to a bit further up the order, here's Joe Newman right now battling with Martin Tilling. In fact, I think he's just made the pass on Tilling and has got into P11, what is P4 in the gold class, as they make the way through the rest of the spoon and now down to the back straight. But what a dramatic race this has been so far, and I think the drama is only to continue as time wears on here, and what exactly is going to happen we'll have to wait and find out. But so far, in the space of no more than 8 minutes, we've seen mass drama, and there is a tank slap with Joe Newman, the car just not wanting to point in towards the apex of 130R, and you can see the car stepping out of the rear. Tilling's going to look for the move as he goes outside to inside, and that's a drag race down through 17, but the Porsche has the acceleration, and Tilling has to be on the outside line and back out slightly as they make the way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1 once again. But in the long charge they go here, and it's going to be Newman on the inside. Sight Anthony here makes it free wide as they make the way into turn 1, and Sight Anthony up the inside of the pair of them, and Tilling looks up the inside as well as Newman there gets caught out, and Tilling comes on through. Well, Sight Anthony making it a 2-for-1 special. The Platinum driver now trying to run away with overall position gain. Meanwhile, Tilling, this is going to be very critical for him, given that Joshua Pratt is currently leading in the gold class, and Tilling right now needs to mitigate the damage. There's no doubt about it as they make the way through turns 5, 6 and into 7 very shortly. A bit further back, meanwhile, Chris Edison continues to lead in the silver class, albeit David Larson is right behind him, and there is the BMW M4 of the 306 driver, all that Larson, as they make the way out of turn 7 and into Degner 1 at 8. You can see Edison there not taking any apex curve because it can unsettle the Porsche quite dramatically, and indeed any mid-engine rear-wheel drive car. But as they make the way out of Degner 2 and up towards the hairpin now, Larson there waiting in the wings to bounce. Is Edison even dares make a mistake as they make the way through, and almost taking the camera off the car there does Larson as they make the way out to turn number 11 and through 12 again. As they come through the long right-hander here, I think Edison just focusing on one thing right now, and that is the road in front of him, and only having to worry about Larson if he gets down his inside. But as they make the way into Spoon Curve here, I think it's going to be a question of when, not if, Larson can get close enough to try and force a move as they make the way out of Spoon and now onto the back straight. But as they come charge on free, you can see John Eddowes there battling with Colin Patterson as they make the way off into the distance past the stationary camera on the west straight, and there Eddowes right now on the inside trying to defend versus what is Patterson as they make the way into left-hander, and both drivers here for TGSimSport deciding to let the gold driver go through in the lead of the pair as they make the way down to the braking zone for Casio once again. But as they come on through here, 10 minutes clear, we still got half an hour to go, 3/4 remaining, but if it's any indication of what's to come, there's going to be plenty more before we're done. And speaking of plenty more, the battle for what is P4 in the gold class continues. Tilling here with just no straight line speed compared to the Porsche of what is then Newman, and Newman looking around the outside as they make the way into turns 1 and 2. Newman's going to commit to the outside all the way through. Tilling gives him the space, but you can see there Newman just not able to carry the 1 or 2 miles now he needs to be on the inside to free and potentially get the move said and done. And Tilling here, the UKSimRacing pink driver, having his defensive credentials tested to the utmost today, and so far he's passing the test with flying colours as they make the way through turn number 7 once again. And Newman has got to get a bit more inventive here, I'm sure he will, as meanwhile Alex Hill from TGSimSport looks at this, and I think he's starting to rub his hands together, but he can't become complacent because he's got the silver lead battle right on his heels as they make the way into Degner's 1 and 2 once again. But as they come through the right-hander at Degner 2 here, you can see a little bit further up the road that Pratt right now, oh my goodness, and that is Sam Congreve parked on the hairpin apex. That's turn 11, and the SimRacing driver trying to get the car turned. You can see everybody there having to dodge the Mercedes that's parked slightly on the track surface, and now Congreve finds a window to turn it around and get it off the circuit, as that means that he's going to drop all the way down the order, and that is no good news for SimRacing. Meanwhile, ahead as a result of that moment, what we've now got is David Larson right on the back of Chris Edison. We talked about this a bit earlier on, but when I say right on the back, I mean literally glued to the back right now as they make the way out of what is there, the Spoon Curve. But also John Eddowes not too far behind either, and I think Chris Edison here, if he can balance this right, he might be able to force Larson backwards towards Eddowes and give himself a bit further breathing room, as we see our drivers there all getting ready to turn to 130 and all prematurely running a wheel onto the grass. As we can see there, Hill just going a little bit wide, but bringing it back onto the tarmac safely, as meanwhile Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, here is Sam Sherwood right now running in P2 in the gold class. He's not quite on the pace of Pratt as they make their way across the timeline, although I say that he was 2 seconds faster than that previous versus Pratt, but I think Pratt having to dodge the wayward Sam Congrevers. Meanwhile, we see Colin McGurk going on through there to gain what is P7 overall. No change of class position with the platinum driver passing the gold driver, but meanwhile into the pits comes Sean Cranley Swash, the privateer for Rhino Motorsport, and I think he's decided to go in for an early pit stop there in the Porsche 911. But as he parks up here, switching away from the traditional Lamborghini, we do look back to the pictures here of what is the battle for the silver lead, and you can see that Larson right now between that rock and a hard place as they make the way on around through turn 6 and into 7 shortly. And I think for Larson at this point, what he's got to do is weigh it up as a matter of statistics, which, oh goodness me, he's not going to weigh it up anymore, as meanwhile that was Chris Eddersford losing the rear of the car. The UKSimRacing Porsche falls to turn number 7. He turns it around, then just in time as well as everyone starts to come up behind and come on through. But there, an error from Chris Eddersford just losing the rear and cutting into our train of thought. And what we were trying to say was that could it be the case that Larson would need to simply let Eddowes go and then look for the move on Eddersford? But in the end, he didn't need to worry about that at all. But we take a look back at what exactly happened to Chris Eddersford. So this was only moments ago, and as they made the way, you're going to see Edison here. The car just starts to step out, and Larson there, well, he timed it to perfection in terms of putting the throttle back down, but Edison in the end losing out considerably, and Larson picking up the place that's most valuable, of course, the lead of the silver class here. And whilst it may not be enough to take the fight necessary to Stephen Masters in terms of pace, with Masters having that major incident early on which has dropped him all the way down the order to P23 versus Larson in P14 overall, Larson right now could have a major opening to be in the hunt for the championship win. Meanwhile, speaking of openings, we can see here Matthew Whitefoot finds the inside line down the back straight up towards 130R versus Reggie Greenfield to gain P18, P4 in the silver class versus the bronze leader behind the Greenfield. It's a change of overall position. I don't think Greenfield wants to fight that one too hard because, again, focusing on what he can manage in this race, and that is managing letting the other classes drivers through when it's the right time to do so. And now as he makes his way through the final corner onto another lap, Greenfield definitely setting himself up for success here today. Where's James Connolly, I hear you ask? Well, Connolly right now lapping a little bit off the pace of Greenfield as he makes his way across the timeline, and well, that lap was half a second slower by comparison, but still at the same time Connolly putting in some very good laps here in order to maintain his P2 position as he makes his way down to turn number 2. His main pursuer is Mark Johnson, who's all the way back on the back straight here as he makes his way up towards turn number 3. And with Pays in the pit lane, I believe it is a retirement for Pays. It could be the case that this is going to shuffle the bronze championship considerably here, given the fact that right now all the major contenders in the bronze championship have all lost out considerably. Johnson right now is the best place for the trio of Johnson, Sharples and Pays, but in return Connolly and Greenfield are both going to be picking up major points, and that may just work out for them very nicely in the long term with not too many rounds remaining. Meanwhile, speaking of rounds remaining here, well, he won't be thinking about rounds remaining, he'll be just thinking about doing it lap after lap, and right now in control is Hitchen. Meanwhile, Austin William Campbell here, I think he's had an off track coming out to Spoon Curve, or he's alternatively just had a slowdown of some description, because we look here to the battle for P3 overall in the Platinum class. Austin William Campbell has fallen behind Daniel Thomas, and he loses the rear at 130R, and it goes into the wall. And goodness me, for the privateer of the 555 car, well, he's had a good run over the last couple of rounds, but that run has come to its end here. And of course, we talked about him being in Season 7 one of the unluckiest drivers of the championship, given that when there seemed to be an instant, he was the one who seemed to find the forefront of it. But right now, as he makes his way back up to speed, well, he's gone from a race to be inside the top 3 overall and in class to being outside of the top 10 overall, and looking at what is going to be a P7 in the Platinum class currently as he makes his way down the start-finish straight. But first things first, he needs to get himself back up to tempo and then pass the gold drivers around him. As they make the way into turn 1 once more, you can see Alex Hill there taking a cheeky look up the inside of Campbell, making the way into one, but decides better of it. I think he expects that Austin William Campbell may be able to start to pressure Joe Newman, and therefore Hill can gain as a result of that versus class peer. But as they make the way through the S's, we were going to take a look back at what exactly had happened between the likes of Thomas and also Campbell as they made the way out to Spoon Curve, and I do believe we do have a replay coming up very shortly of that to explain exactly what had happened there, and here it is. In fact, I think Austin William Campbell, oh goodness me, the car was snaking there, coming out of Spoon, so that was a sign of things to come. Austin William Campbell, I think the rear tyre's just not gripping up and perhaps a little bit overheated, and then Thomas gaining the place, and as they made the way on down here, we ride on board with Austin William Campbell to give you what exactly happened on board. You can see there just going a little bit wide onto the slippy AstroTurf, and well, the car then just not in the driver's control, really a passenger at that point. Unfortunate, but he's still got plenty of time to go to try and recover some points and positions in this race. But as he makes his way through on the corners ahead of him right now, including turn number 13 once more, we cut back to live pictures and see Alex Hill hot on the heels of Campbell, and Hill going a bit deep. Then got to be careful. You can see that light green patch, a very slippery patch on the surface, and indeed not offering any grip compared to the tarmac or the curbs by comparison. And as our drivers make the way up towards 130R right now in the long run here, we're not expecting a position change, or are we? Will Hill look for the move this time? He thinks about it. He's close enough to go for it on the run out of 130R up towards Casio. And now will he go for it on the anchors here? He's going to commit to the move. The space is there. They run door to door, and Alex Hill tries to go inside to outside, but he's pushed off there as they make the way out of the corner. I do not think that Austin William Campbell's going to be too pleased about what was happening there, and indeed Alex Hill none more so, as I think there was a bit of elbows out, and meanwhile that's going to open up the door here for Eddowes versus Larson to kick off, and Eddowes gets ahead of Larson as they make the way down towards turn 1 and 2, and as they make the way into the double right sequence here, Eddowes almost in sight of an overall top 10, now P11 overall, getting ahead of the silver leader. But as they make the way through turns 3 and 4 and through the remainder of the S's here, Hill right now I think will be looking at this and thinking, I've just lost a place unnecessarily and it's not my fault. But as they make the way into turns 5 and 6, we can see there Mark Collicott behind with Colin Patterson close on his heels as well, and the two of them battling for P2 in the silver class right now, seeing the silver leader just round the corner from them. But I think it's all the more important for them to be battling for the P2 right now in their minds as they make the way through turn 7 and down towards turn number 8. As they charge through the right hand here of Degner 1, looking a bit further back. In fact, we won't look a bit further back, we look a bit further forward. That is a Sam Sherwood going deep as they make the way out of the hairpin, and Cy Anthony gaining the place versus Sherwood, moving up to P7 overall. No change in the class position here with the Platinum driver coming on through for Symphony Esports Black versus Sherwood from BWT. But right now Sherwood's got a more pressing issue behind him, and that is Peter Cox, who's been right on with the gearbox here of the BMW M4 Sherwood. You can see running a little bit wide, they're coming out to Spoon Curve. It doesn't cost him too much, but Cox right there ready and waiting to pounce, we should say, as they make the way up towards 130R. But in the charge they go, and as they make the way into the fast left hand here, by the time they cross the start finish line this time around, they'll be going on to lap number 11, but more importantly hitting the halfway point of the race. And we still have plenty of pit stops to come, particularly inside the top 20. Our highest placed driver right now, who's already taken his scheduled stop, is Stephen Masters in P19. Otherwise the top 18 have yet to pit, and indeed a lot of the drivers outside the top 20 have pitted due to incidents which have seen them being forced to come into the pits early on. But right now Sherwood keeping what is there, Peter Cox at bay, as they make the way into turns 1 and 2 once more. Coming on through the right hand and a bit further back, you can see Joe Newman there sets a personal best of 59.0 precise, as meanwhile we have to cut from him to Cy Anthony. Now how on earth and what on earth has happened there for Cy Anthony? Finds himself on the outside of 2. It's gone very wrong for the Symphony Esports Black driver, and I think we'll be able to find out what exactly happened shortly, as meanwhile into the pits comes Matthew Whitefoot. He makes his way on in from what was at the time P16, and now he's going to drop down the order to a degree, but where will this put him out with his scheduled stop? We'll have to wait and find out, as Hill as well comes on out of the pit lane taking his scheduled stop. He drops down to P21, being passed there by what is Austin William Campbell. And I think Hill at this point will be looking ahead of him thinking, not again, after what happened between the two of them at Casio. But I'm sure it'll be different circumstances next time round as both drivers make their way up to speed and head through the S's once more. But we talked about Cy Anthony being involved in an incident moments ago at turn 1 and 2, and let's take a look back at exactly what happened. This was Cy Anthony making his way into turn 1. As he came on through the right hand here, the car just gave way on the curve at turn number 2. You could see that on the entry curve on the left hand side, the rear left tyre just not gripping up as much as he wanted it to, and at first he had to fight the steering wheel as he tried to commit to the corner. The car just did not want to rotate with him, but instead took the driver around and off the circuit, and Cy Anthony there in a rare error, dropping down to P6 in the Platinum class, P10 overall, as we return to the live pictures and we look back to the battle between Sherwood and Cox here as it intensifies. They make the way in towards 130R through the left-hander and down towards Casio. But as they make the way into the braking zone here, Sherwood holds the position comfortably for now. Cox not close enough to force a move into the chicane. Instead, who will come into the pits if either of them do? Neither do. They decide both to continue here and both waiting to see who flinches first in the run into the pits. But as they make the way on towards lap number 12 under race conditions, you see a little bit further back there in the rear of the camera shot, Joe Newman from GT3. He's fallen a bit further back here. He's now 6 seconds off of this battle, but looking to get into the fight if he can. There's no doubt about it. Meanwhile, we look to Alex Hill here, who looks up the inside of Austin William Campbell. Well, these two battled into Casio moments ago, and they both made their way through 130R, both making errors there and running a bit wide. But onto the brakes, into the chicane, and Hill, they're trying to get as close as possible, but I think decide not to try and go inside to outside this time and waiting later on as they battle for P20 overall. But meanwhile, as they make the way on to the next lap, the drivers who are already on that lap include Jonathan Hitchen, your race leader here, and the Symphony Esports white driver right now. It is business as usual. He's not been in attendance the last couple of rounds, but back here today and absolutely flying as he makes his way through turn number 12 and up towards 13. And I do not think it's in doubt for Hitchen, although I say that he runs a little bit wide there, but seems to find grip where there should be no grip. And as he makes his way out of turn number 13, right now it is all his in the running. As meanwhile, Damien Lovett a bit further back here with an advantage of what is 1.4 seconds over Daniel Thomas. He's looking good so far, but if we can count on one thing from Daniel Thomas, it's not about the first half of the race that you have to watch out for with the Welshman. It is the second half, because the BWT Motorsport driver is very strong in terms of strategy, and we saw that earlier on in the season. We've seen it in the midpoint of the season, and will we see it in the latter half of the season? Well, we may very likely see it here at Suzuka today, given the pace he's running. And then in P4 we do have Richard Yep from DCW Racing, who right now in the BMW M4 bucking the trend of Porsche's dominating and running comfortably inside the top 5 here before your gold leader of Joshua Pratt in P5 a little bit further back. And speaking of Pratt, here he is making his way up through the final corner and on to the next lap, and right now the privateer having a happy race and indeed running out front in the gold class by a margin quite comfortable versus Sherwood and Cox of what is about 4.3 seconds as they make the way on to the next lap. And Carl McGuirt just a little bit behind here, and the Mercedes driver right now P5 in the Platinum class, where he's not quite on the pace to close up to the top 4 in the class, but close behind them on pace, only by a couple of attempts. And if they do make a mistake, particularly Yep for example, then he may just find himself jumping up there and gaining another position before all is said and done. But Cy Anthony into the pit lane, and that pit stop now, his scheduled stop I do believe, and therefore that's going to drop him way down the order, albeit he'll have an opportunity to close back on up. Meanwhile, we do look from what is Carl McGuirk here to your bronze leader, Reggie Greenfield, going from one Mercedes to another, and the Tiki Supersport driver here absolutely faultless as he makes his way on around through into the S's once again and just running his race as he comes on through turns 3 and 4 and up towards 5 and 6, and this is looking to be a potential maiden win in the class if he carries on this way, and presuming of course that we do not curse him, it's in our intention to do so. As meanwhile James Conley here also running a strong race. He has been passed recently by both Nathan Foster and Martin Tillin, but both drivers in a different class, and the bronze driver right now focusing on P2 in this class as he makes his way in the 46 Ferrari through turn at number 7. The lone Ferrari on the grid here today, but fantastic to see the car variety in the 488 Evo machine as he makes his way down into turn number 8 and 9. Of course, this machine being phased out next year in the GT3 modular classification with the Ferrari 296, which will be seen take to the circuits in 2023. But right now, making sure to enjoy the car as much as possible. As we see there, Austin William Campbell coming from the inside there, and Conley not fighting this. He does not need to, as Alex Hill also comes on through on the inside of the hairpin. But as they make the way out, we look back to Chris Edisford here, who after his unfortunate spin at turn number 7 now finds himself behind Casper Brotner. Both drivers, of course, having made a pit stop already, so they are effectively battling for silver class position, and it is on track, not strategy as well now, all the way down to the wire. And we can see here Brotner holding a firm position, that BMW M4 P25 overall, P6 in the class, as they make the way through turn number 12 and up towards turn 13. as they come through just a little bit further back. That is Matthew Whitefoot, who finds himself behind the pair, and he always wants to be picking up the positions as well. As meanwhile, into the pits from the lead of the silver class, it is David Larson who parks on up and gets his car serviced here for its mandatory pit stop. Indeed, fuel will be going in, not new tyres, and as he gets set to come out the pit lane shortly, it's Mark Collicott now who leads the silver class for DCW Racing, albeit of course yet to take his pit stop, so we would expect he comes out behind Larson when it's all said and done. But as he makes his way through the S-sequence of corners here, Patterson just a bit further back for Tiki Sport Tower, and these two enjoying a great race. But it does look as though Collicott has found the upper hand as Patterson there drifts his way into turn 7, and he just misses catching the car as he goes back onto the inside grass. And Patterson there, it could have gone far, far worse, but it's not worked out. And Stephen Masters here is not too far behind as he comes through 6 into 7. I think Masters is going to be hearing on his delta from the pit crew that now the time between himself and Patterson has been slashed astronomically, and it's through Patterson making an error through turn 6 into 7. Just a little bit of grass on turning into 7. It's unsettled the car, and Patterson has lost out dearly in terms of the hunt versus Collicott, and this could now be an opportunity for Masters to close on up even further, given the fact that Masters has already pitted once, and we're suspecting he's not going to be pitting again today. But as he makes his way out of the hairpin and in towards turn number 12 here, Masters will know that if he pushes too hard, an error will be not too far away, and we saw that earlier on, so therefore he'll be keeping his head down and focusing on what he can do in the car. As meanwhile, Damien Lobbett and Richard Yep are both into the pits, and they've decided to come on in here. They've taken the car as far as they want to, and Pratt meanwhile comes in from the gold lead. McGurk and Sherwood in as well, so I think it is pit stop season, but Peter Cox stays on out to take the lead of the gold class here, albeit with a pit stop still to be used, so therefore Cox right now provisional gold leader, but we believe it will go back to the hands of Pratt when he's all said and done. But on top of that as well, we have Edo's coming on through. He's going to make his way up to P2 for a time in the gold class here, albeit the TT Sport Tower driver there has coming out of the pit lane alongside him Damien Lobbett, and the platinum driver here comes on out in P5 overall, P3 in the platinum class. And he comes out quite comfortably ahead of Yep in all consideration as they make the way into the S's here. And between the two of them, they do have Mark Collicott, who is your silver leader at this time. And of course, we are waiting to see where Larson will come out in relation to Collicott when Collicott takes his pit stop, because we believe that it is Collicott who needs to be serviced. But meanwhile, speaking of being serviced and marking our words incorrectly, Stephen Masters in for his second pit stop here. He's coming in again, so that first pit stop was too early. It's not enough, and Masters now will drop further down the order, and that will be a sight of relief for Patterson in particular, Colin Patterson, who may have been wondering whether he was going to lose out on a potential podium here to Masters, when it's not to be. But speaking of losing out, here can Masters come out ahead of Chris Eddersford. The two UKSimRacing drivers go side by side into turns 1 and 2, and Eddersford hangs it round the outside and he covers it off for now. And for Chris Eddersford here, now he finds himself between a rock and a hard place, in the fact that it's a hard place to catch up to Casper Brotner in front as they make the way through what is turns 5 and 6. But in return, Stephen Masters will not wait, and behind them you've also got Matthew Whitefoot here, the privateer, who wants an opportunity to pick up places as well. Can Whitefoot get into this fight? They're battling for P5 in the silver class, and all 4 drivers have taken the mandatory pit stop as we're to understand it. But look at this, Eddersford right now with pressure behind him from Stephen Masters as we ride on board here with the privateer of Masters in the 14 car as he makes his way up towards the hairpin, and as he comes through into the braking zone here, onto the brakes they go, the pair of Porsches behind the BMW, and the BMW behind as well. In the BMW sandwich we do have Hitchen, Jonathan Hitchen still leading this race as he makes his way out of the pit lane. Daniel Thomas just behind, and Peter Cox P3 in the pit lane with Damien Lobbett coming on through. We do in fact look away from Stephen Masters for a brief moment up to the top 4, and we can see Yep making his way past the pit lane exit. Here is Peter Cox making his way out the pit lane, but Joshua Pratt will come on through to retake the lead of the gold class as Cox rejoins in P2. And there is Sam Sherwood, and Peter Cox has jumped ahead of Sherwood in the pit stops, and Peter Cox's pit stop, my goodness, was 2 seconds faster as well. And that delta between Sherwood and Cox is 2.7 seconds, so I think that explains a good chunk of the story. But also Sherwood has just not hooked up the outlap like he's wanted to, and therefore that has cost Sherwood the run on Cox as they make the way back up to speed here in the second half of their racing stint. Now to stint number 2, and Peter Cox here has a huge opportunity to land a P2 in the gold class, P6 overall. But meanwhile, speaking of other drama on circuit right now in terms of those pit stops playing on out, Well, Mark Collicott has pitted and come back out, and he's ahead of David Lawson. Mark Collicott has jumped ahead of the Symphony Esports white driver here with what was a slightly faster pit stop, only by 4 attempts. So it's all come down in the end to Collicott nailing the run into the pits and out, and as they make the way into Degner 1, now David Larson will be looking at this and thinking there's only one way to go, and it's all in to try and pick up the win as they make the way out of what is Degner 2. And meanwhile, going understated, we haven't talked about him at all here. You will remember that we saw Sean Cranny Swash coming about 14 minutes into the race. He's in P3 in the silver class right now. Would you believe it? The 177 Verano Motorsport Porsche has jumped all the way up from what was at the time P7 in the silver class, if my memory serves me correctly, into P3, and it's all through an undercut that's worked out well, and he has got a 5.3 second gap. So what is behind him? Colin Patterson in P4 in the silver class, P18, and Sean Cranny Swash here making strategy work miracles, as meanwhile we look a bit further back to Cy Anthony, who's chasing after Sam Congreve, and these two no strangers to racing one another. And will we see some sparks fly between them? Well, we definitely hope so, as they make the way up towards 130R. Previously, they've been battling for podiums and wins, but now they're battling for what is P7 in the Platinum class. And Congreve defends on the inside versus Cy Anthony. Anthony goes wide and onto the AstroTurf, and the car snaps loose and into the inside wall. And, well, it was a fair defence from Sam Congreve. Cy Anthony, I think, knew he was going to have to go onto the slippery material, and in the end, he's come off the worst of the pair. Meanwhile, Nathan Foster is looking at this right now, thinking he needs to clear Patterson in order to have a run at P8 in the Platinum class, as they make the way across the timeline once again. And Nathan Foster, I don't think he's going to waste any minutes here as he makes his way down the start-finish straight. And as they make the way into turn 1, he looks on the inside here, Patterson on the outside, and Patterson does not fight it hard. He lets Foster go as they make the way into turn number 2. Meanwhile, all the way up, battling for P2 right now, it's Daniel Thomas versus Damien Lobbett, and Daniel Thomas here holding on to P2 right now as they make the way on through. And in fact, hold on a second, I think Daniel Thomas has jumped ahead of Damien Lobbett, unless I'm mistaken, in the pit lane. Oh, it's been another jump if so, but Daniel Thomas, we said watch out for how he can make the jump, but Daniel Thomas indeed, I think, has made the jump on Damien Lobbett, and now making his way on around here through the spoon curve and up towards 130R. He's given an opportunity to pick up a P2 and really announce himself in the Platinum class as the best of the rest outside of Jonathan Hitchen. But Damien Lobbett will have one or two things to say about that. There's no doubt about it. You can count on him pushing it hard all the way to the end of the final 6 minutes and the final lap of this race as they make the way on down into what is there, the Casio Triangle now, as they come on through. Damien Lobbett right now holding on and close behind. I think what he's got to try and do here is either get Thomas to make a mistake, or he's got to look for the move on the final lap, because given how close the pace is between these two drivers, well, if one of them makes a mistake, that will be enough in order to separate the two. Conversely, of course, if Lobbett can get close enough to be in position to make the move on the final lap, that may be where he could get it done at the last opportunity to make sure that Thomas cannot come back at him on a lap after. But as they make the way into the S's right now, you can see there Thomas taking a bit too much apex curve at turns 3 and 4. In fact, that unsettled the car quite considerably as they made the way through the corners. And right now, the BWT Motorsport driver here, I think, feeling a bit of pressure from the Symphony Esports driver behind as they make the way through 6, 7, and up towards 8 they go. Meanwhile, Martin Tillin here going very deep into turns 1 and 2. And, well, battling with John Eddowes here for P5 in the gold class. And as they make the way through turns 3 and 4, Eddowes has taken the position, I do believe. Now, what exactly has led to that, we'll take a look back very shortly, but John Eddowes going into the fighting spirit here as they make the way through the corners, and now out of 16 towards 7, and as they make the way out to 7, we stay with the 2 before taking a look back to see whether Tilling has the run up towards Degner 1. I don't think so. So in fact, we are going to, in fact, before we cut away to that, there's more drama here as James Connolly is on the heels of Reggie Greenfield as they make the way into turns 1 and 2, and I think Reggie Greenfield's had a mistake because he's lost a lot of time, and as they make the way on through, we are trying to find out what's happened. I think Greenfield's had an error or two because James Connolly has closed up to the bronze leader massively in the last couple of laps, and as they make the way through the S's right now, James Connolly may be able to pick up a win. And if I remember correctly, unless I'm mistaken, it was here last season where he picked up his only win in the bronze class in season 7, and Suzuka is going so well for the Ferrari driver as they make the way through 7 and up towards 8. Can Reggie Greenfield hold hold on, or will Conley make it another win at Suzuka here today? As meanwhile, John Eddowes has had an off-track further up the road and let Tilling go as a result, and also lost out to Kolokot. And well, we are going to take a quick look back at what happened between Eddowes and Tilling. And this was firstly the move into turn one. Eddowes looking up the inside here, Tilling on the outside, and Tilling giving the space and almost going onto the grass there and losing the car. But that's how Eddowes got the move done. And then we cut forward a little bit to what happened later. Eddowes going off track, and it was at Spoon Curve. Oh, goodness me, and the car just dropping off the curb there, coming out of the first part of the left hand, and that's what also led to what was Kolokot coming through. But we return to live pictures now, and as we do, the battle is on for the bronze win with in fact 3.5 minutes still to go, plus the final lap, and behind them, well, there's Darryl Norquette, and Norquette's looking at this, I think he's going to be thinking, okay, right, I'm going for overall position here, I need to knock them both out of the way as soon as possible, and I think James Conley at this point might be mouthing into his rearview mirror, come on Norquette, let me have a shot at him, I do not need you pushing your way up the inside right now, but Norquette looks through it there, and Conley does not back out going through Casio. He knows that he's on for the fight here for the win, and it's not going to be in his mind to let Norquette go, as Norquette comes into the pits there for what is another pit stop. I do believe he has not got enough fuel to get to the end of the race perhaps, and James Conley right now hot on the heels of Greenfield as they make the way on towards turns 1 and 2 once again. But meanwhile, as we look to Chris Eddersford here, and Chris Eddersford has kept Stephen Masters behind him now for the best part of at least 10 minutes as they make their way through turn number 7. We'll say what you will about Eddersford's race in terms of that mistake cost him dearly at turn number 7, but right now, when he's under the ultimate pressure of the championship leader in his class bearing down, and then with his fangs all bearing, Eddersford not showing any signs of wilting. Meanwhile, oh goodness me, Matthew Whitefoot, they're pointing the wrong way at turn number 7. Well, that's gone so very wrong for Whitefoot, but he's going to have plenty of opportunity to turn the car. Next driver is Casper Brotner, who's just getting himself up to speed. And what happened to Matthew Whitefoot? Well, this was only moments ago. He'd fallen back a little bit off of the battles in front of him in the silver class and coming through turn 7. Understeers a little bit wide of apex, goes beyond the exit curve there. You can see the right-hand side tyres dropping off the curb, and that was enough to unsettle the car as he tried to get the power down and into the wall. And what a whack to the tyre barrier that is. And that BMW M4 now missing its bonnet is not going to be in a healthy state of mind. I think he's just going to try and get the car to the end to get the points on the board and lose no more positions in the class. He's dropped to P8 in the silver class, losing out versus Casper Brotner, and also in the chase after Masters, Eddersford and Patterson. But meanwhile, Tilling into the pits, and this is not good news for Martin Tilling. Surely, is this a driver? I think it might be, unless he's coming into the pits for fuel. I think it is just a drive-through penalty for the UKSimRacing pink driver, and that is completely scuppered all what he's worked hard for, and it means now that Joshua Pratt is going to gain massively in the championship stakes. As we see Brad just running, comes in the lead of the gold class here as he makes his way through Degner 1 and Degner 2. And as they come through the double right hand here, whereas Hill and Tilling have fallen, Pratt has succeeded so far, albeit he's got one more lap to turn after this one, and he's got to bring it to the very end. But meanwhile, speaking of bringing it to the very end, this is the rivalry between Reggie Greenfield and James Conley for the bronze win here as they make their way down towards turn 1, and Conley goes in, he looks for it there, and I'm getting flashbacks to the opening lap of what is the 1990 Suzuka Grand Prix with Conley trying to get his nose in there, albeit not trying to force the issue immediately. And as they make their way through turns 3 and 4, we can see Conley getting closer and closer with every lap turn. He's thinking about it. He will have, I do believe, one more lap after this as Hitchen crosses the timelines. I look out my commentary box window to make it a 21 lap race, and he has not lapped the bronze leaders, so as a result he will not cause them to finish their race a lap early. They will have one more after this, and right now Greenfield under so much pressure to hold on. Meanwhile, Patterson here holding Chris Eddersford at bay, as Eddersford in turn is keeping Masters at bay, and in fact Masters has dropped off a little bit here as they make the way through 12 and up towards 13, and Eddersford looks up the inside. He goes all in here, he gets his nose in there, and Patterson opens the steering through the second part of Spoon. They go, and Eddersford at a critical moment gets the move done. But now it's the drag race down the back straight here as they head up towards turn number 14, or 130R as we prefer to call it. You can see here Patterson having to deal with the fact that two Porsches are absolutely flying on through, and Masters here trying to go on through on the inside. He can't find it, but Eddersford goes a little bit wide, but he finds the grip, and Eddersford holds on, surviving a freeway run all the way towards 130R and getting it done. Meanwhile, Sean Cranley swashes into the pits, and it's for fuel right at the very end, and the masterful undercut is undermined with 1 lap of fuel missing as he comes on in, and that is a P3 gone, and he's going to jump out of contention. That means right now, and Chris Edison is battling for P3 in the silver class. I don't think he's going to know it, but as he makes his way through turns 1 and 2 right now, he's battling to be on the podium despite all the misfortunes. And meanwhile, Nathan Foster has gone off into the gravel there. I'm not sure what's happened to Nathan Foster. We'll have to look back at that, but meanwhile, we look to the bronze leaders here, and Conley's along the inside as they head into turn 1. He goes a bit deep. Greenfield looks for the cutback. He can't find it, and James Conley is into the lead of the class, but he goes a bit deep. We have to cut away though as they make their way into turn 3 for coming out of Casio Triangle here to take the checker flag of this race. It is Jonathan Hitchen who makes it another win on his return, and it's a win overall and in the platinum class of the Symphony Esports white driver in domineering fashion as he crosses the timeline. It will then be very shortly Daniel Thomas who comes on through to take P2 overall and on the platinum podium as he makes his way to the timeline, followed up by what will be Damien Lobbett in short order P3 in the end, being pipped to the post on strategy versus Mornis Thomas, Richard Yet P4, and then it's Joshua Pratt who comes on through to take the win in the gold class, P5 overall in a critical win here today. Huge points gain ahead of Peter Cox, hot on his heels in P6, P2 in the gold class. It'll then be Cole McGurk who comes on through to complete his run into the top 5 in the platinum class, P5 platinum, P7 overall. Sam Shelby completes the gold podium there, P8 overall ahead of Joe Newman, Austin William Campbell P10, and it'll be Mark Collicott who crosses the line, your silver winner. Congratulations to DCW Racing driver in an absolute stellar drive ahead of John Eddowes P12, David Larson at P13 in the end, and then it will be Cy Anthony who comes behind the second place silver drive P14, Martin Tillin P15, Stephen Masters P16 who's got ahead of Chris Edison. That's happened off camera, and Masters is going to come on through to take the final spot on the silver podium ahead of Chris Edison. We will take a look back at how that happens shortly. Chris Edison P17, Colin Patterson in P18 here ahead of Sean Cranley Swash, who you've got to feel for, was on course for a surprise podium. Nathan Foster P20 as he comes through the pit lane, and James Conley will hold off Reggie Greenfield to the line to make it a win in the bronze class, his first of the season ahead of Reggie Greenfield who takes his first second place of the season, and that's in the bronze class as well. Casper Brotner P23, Darren Orkett P24, and as my voice is about to give way, Mark Johnson will come on through to complete all the drivers finishing on the lead lap, P25, but for him, critically P3 in the bronze class, and that keeps his championship lead well alive with a loss of points for Sharples and Daniel Pays, and is Darren Sharples and Daniel Pays, as we see Mark Johnson completing the overall finishers. But my goodness, what an end to this race. There's no doubt about it, but so much happening right to the very end. And in fact, as we do now take a look back, we're going to take a look back at firstly what happened between Stephen Masters and Chris Eddersford. And this was coming out of 130R, and Stephen Masters there. Well, Chris Eddersford in the end going deep right at the last moment into Casio, and he'll be kicking himself and missing his braking point because that's what enabled Masters to come through. Otherwise, it would have been the perfect defence all the way to the remainder of the end of the race, but not to be for Chris Eddersford today. And what about the battle between Conley and Reggie Greenfield? We had to cut away from it, but here we go once again, ladies and gentlemen. The battle for the bronze lead, and it came down to the final lap into turns 1 and 2. Conley on the inside versus Greenfield, who tried to cut back there, but Conley committed to the move, and you could see there it was either going to go off or he was going to get it done. Went a bit deep out 2, but defended well into 3. Greenfield trying to look for the run, but decided to cut back in, and as they came through turn 4, this was where Greenfield started to lose out. As we ride on board here with Reggie Greenfield and TE Sim Sport Machine, just not quite able to get the move done, but right there coming out of 5, 6 and up towards 7. And did Greenfield have a run later on in the lap, or did he lose out? We're going to follow this for a bit because I think it's been understated just how close this battle has been all the way through. Was he made his way through turn number 7 up into 8 here? This was where I think it started to go away from him a little bit, although I say that again, James Conley going a bit deep into 9 but bringing it back together just about. And And as they made their way up towards turns 10 and 11, Greenfield getting us closely dead on the brake in there, but wasn't to be into the hairpin. And then by going deep, that is what released the opportunity to James Connolly to run away to the finish. But a brilliant battle between the pair of them. And now, as we do head back to our live pictures here, let's take you through those race results, of course, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So starting off with our overall results here today in round number 9 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 8 Championship, as brought to you on the Premier Sim Racing platform known only as iRacing, available on PC. Jonathan Hitchen taking the win in the end by 15 seconds overall versus Daniel Thomas P2, and Damien Lobbit there close behind Thomas in P3 on the overall podium. Richard Yep P4 in a solid race of DCW Racing ahead of Joshua Pratt, your gold winner P5, the privateer there, keeping his championship momentum well and firmly on the roll, with Peter Cox P6, Carl McGirt P7, Sam Sherwood P8 in a brilliant drive to a podium finish for Sam Sherwood, much like Peter Cox, both drivers there picking up key points, with Joe Newman P9 in a return to the grid. The 7 racing driver, they're having a great day of racing and unfortunate to miss out on the podium by 1.5 seconds. And then Austin William Campbell in P10 ahead of best the rest finisher P11 Mark Collicott there, your silver winner. And of course, just to reiterate, James Connolly finishing P21 overall, your bronze winner. But now coming on to our individual classes, we look here to what is the Platinum class first and foremost, and Jonathan Hitchen taking the win, as we've mentioned previously, ahead of Daniel Thomas and Damien Lobbit, with Richard Jett in P4, Carl McGirt P5, and then Austin William Campbell P6 in the end, 3 seconds off of Carl McGirt. Both drivers having a day of challenges. For Carl McGirt, it was about hounding the Mercedes around the circuit. For Austin William Campbell, it was a mistake that cost him dearly. Cy Anthony there, P7, ahead of Darren Orkett, P8. Nathan Foster P9 and Sam Congreve having an instant on the final lap, which saw him return to the pits and finish a lap down effectively as a result there, P10 in the Platinum class. Then we come on to the Gold class, and we can see here in our second tier of driver classification, Joshua Pratt bringing home the win by 1.8 seconds over Peter Cox, who was flying at the end, really putting in huge laps to try and close that gap down, but not enough time in the day. Sam Sherwood at P3 there for BWT Motorsport, ahead of Simam Racing's Joe Newman, and it was John Eddowes and Tiki Sim Sport Towers at BMW M4, bringing home a top 5 finish in a great drive from Eddowes today, ahead of Martin Till in P6, Alex Hill P7, Billy Mann P8, and Daniel Dan Weaver with that early retirement, losing out on what could have been a stellar day at Suzuka for the Ford GT, but it wasn't to be after that instant spoon curve early on in the race. He's classified as P9. Then coming on to the silver class, we can see here in the silvers, Mark Collicott bringing home the win by 4.1 seconds over David Larson in a brilliant drive, and I do believe that is Mark Collicott's maiden win of the season in the silver class. Congratulations to the DCW Racing driver. David Larson in a critical P2 finish here, keeping that run for P2 in the championship well and firmly on the road, as the Symphony Esports white driver also taking points off of Stephen Masters there, the championship leader in P3, recovering to P3 after a difficult early half of the race. Chris Edison just missing out on a podium finish by a mistake into Casio Triangle, finishing behind Masters at the finish line with Colin Patterson P5. Sean Cranny Swash just not enough fuel to make it onto the podium, otherwise it would have been an absolutely brilliant drive. In fact, it would have been the drive of the day if it had been able to get it to the end on the lap of fuel, no doubt about it. But in the end, P6, Casper Brotner P7, Matthew Whitefoot P8, Tyson Melinda P9, and Jeremy Graham P10. And as we come onto the bronze class here, last but not least, we can see James Connolly taking that win, his maiden win of the season by 1 second over Reggie Greenfield, with Mark Johnson P3 in the end recovering to the podium. Darren Sharples and Daniel Pace, his rivals, however, not on the podium, and both finishing at least a lap down, with Pace retiring at the start of the race and Darren Sharples finishing a lap down at the end in P4 ahead of Pace in P5. But those are the race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. And now we're going to take a brief breather, ladies and gentlemen, but we'll be back in approximately 5 to 10 minutes time for post-round interviews. And given the intensity of the racing, I suspect the interviews may be just as intense. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get underway with our post-round interviews for this evening. And so far, we've got 3 drivers who have volunteered at their time to conduct post-round interviews. We'll be hearing firstly from DCW Racing's Mark Collicott, picking up his maiden win of the season in the silver class, before making our way over to Reggie Greenfield, the bronze driver who just missed out on a maiden win in favour of James Connolly, taking the win in that final lap battle. And then we'll be going to Cy Anthony, the Symphony Esports Black driver, who after the Tiki Sim Sport drivers race, which has been a race of all being uphill for Cy Anthony, it has been mixed fortunes today for Symphony Esports Black, and we'll get to hear his thoughts in the Platinum class. But without further ado, let's bring Mark Collicott into the interview room. In fact, we may not be able to do so, I think, due to a slight Discord permissions issue. So we'll be 1 moment, ladies and gentlemen, as we do try to resolve this. So as we do try to resolve this, ladies and gentlemen, and have Mark Collicott join us in the interview room. We just need a brief moment to resolve this, but a very strong race from Collicott all the way through from start to finish and making multiple places on the way to success. But we are just waiting for him to join us. And as Mark Collicott joins us in the interview room and we get around the pesky Discord issues, Mark, an absolutely solid race from yourself from start to finish, but more importantly, your maiden win in the silver class in this season. How do you feel taking your maiden win at Suzuka?
Yeah, to be honest, I was just looking at the results sheet because I wasn't sure if I'd done it or not, because I obviously saw Stephen Masters had a mishap, and as I went past him, so I thought, oh, we're on for it now. So it was kind of, because I think there's 3 or 4 of us in silver who were all quite close together at the start of the race. But to be honest, it was a bit of a yeah. I grew into the race, if I'm honest. I had a bit of a dirty lap on lap 3 where I went sideways around the first turn. So I think that was just down to lack of practice this week, because due to work commitments really. So but yeah, I grew into the race and my pace got steadily better. So but yeah, really pleased with that. It was a good result in the end.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And speaking about how close it was in qualifying, of course, your qualifying session seeing you place P22 on the grid, P5 in class, not too far behind the pace of Patterson and Larson in particular. I mean, the gap between the 3 of you from Larson to yourself was only 2 tenths, if that. And then Chris Edisford a further 3 tenths up the road, and then Masters a long way up the order. Thinking about that in your qualifying session, do you feel as though the lap you put in was representative, or were you hoping perhaps, you know what, you could have just had an extra tenth in you?
No, definitely not. My final, I just couldn't link the lap together, and again, I think that came down to lack of practice this week. I really struggled to tie it all together in the qualifying session, and on my last attempt, I think I was about 4 or 5 tenths up into the chicane at the end. And I just went a bit deep into the chicane and lost all the time. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to improve. But yeah, it was a poor result for qualifying. I definitely had more pace, but that pace obviously came through during the race.
But coming on to the race then, of course, qualifying's only one part of the story. Race start, we saw a bit of drama further up the order, but also drama in the midfield. Just take us through that opening lap from your perspective, because gaining a couple of places at the start, but also being quite smart with the car and not getting into too much trouble.
Yeah, it was a good first couple of laps, and yeah, I kind of just took it easy into the I think it's the Casio triangle, isn't it? Into the chicane there, and yeah, I just wanted to stay out of trouble through there, because I think the front of the field kind of backed the pace up into that, and then got a getaway. So yeah, it was yeah, I just wanted to be safe on that first lap and just settle in. But my problem seemed to start on lap 3. So yeah, as I say, I went sideways around for the first turn, and then I had a bit of an off on 130R as well, but I managed to sort of avoid the barrier and didn't lose too much time, fortunately. So, so yeah, it got better from that point.
Indeed, and from that point onwards, of course, having your mistakes, which were not fatal mistakes to your race campaign, but near misses, shall we say, then the mistakes started to come for all the big names in your class, including Stephen Masters, and then Chris Eddersford fell. Did you think at that point, hold up a second, it seems as though the tables are turning, and they're turning very fast?
Yeah, because as I said at the start, I think it was myself, David Lewis, and Chris and Colin. We were all sort of quite close, and then I had my initial mistakes, and it dropped me back a couple of seconds. But I think I started to close them down again, and then next thing I knew we sort of went past Stephen, who had I haven't seen the incident, but I noticed he was at the side of the track, and then a little bit later I think Chris Eddersford came off as well. So yeah, it was easy places in the end, but it's a shame really, because I think I was starting to catch up with them again, and I think it would have been quite a good battle if we could have. If all of us could have stayed on the track, it could have been quite interesting and exciting. So it's a shame really, but I'll take the result though.
Oh, indeed. And coming on to your strategy, of course, did you go with the strategy you planned from the start, or given everything that had happened, plus also Sean Cranny Swash going for a very ambitious undercut, which saw him fall short by a lap for P3 in the class, did you change your strategy or decide, I'm going to stick to my guns?
I did change actually. I was going to pit a couple laps earlier, but I was slowly catching the car in front, and I think it could have been Lewison at the time. And I was going to pit that lap because I got to I think about 0.8 of a second from him, and I was going to pit, but he dived into the pit as well. So I decided to carry on because I had enough fuel for another 2 laps. So I just thought, I'll try to get into 2 hot laps as quick as I can, just to see if I could take the lead during the pit stops. And fortunately, I did pop out. I popped out, a few tenths ahead of him, and then I was able to sort of keep the pace on and slowly pull away.
Oh, indeed, and a masterclass effort on the strategy and being able to break away. And of course, we saw plenty of drivers say, yourself included, make mistakes. What has made the Suzuka circuit so tricky here this season?
Yeah, I don't know, and I seem to be okay in the practice sessions and qualifying session, but I thought the race. I don't know if the race conditions changed or anything, but it just seemed like during the race that my tyres were overheating. So at one point I had to really sort of ease off a bit and just try to cool the tyres down. But yeah, it did seem quite slippy at times in comparison to the practice session. But maybe it's just me. I'm not sure if anyone else thought the same. But it did seem like there was an awful lot of people making those mistakes.
Indeed, but with mistakes being made by drivers, of course, it's all about keeping it on the tarmac, and you did so successfully all the way to the finish. And with that result now, drop scores applied, putting you up to P6 in the Silver Class Championship, jumping ahead of Tyson Melinda, and only 3 points off of Chris Eddersford, and only 3 rounds to go. I have to ask, how are you feeling for next week's round, the feature race round at the Rudskogen circuit in Norway?
Yeah, I joined the league quite late. I think I missed the first 3-4 races. So it's really nice to see that I'm slowly making my way up the leaderboard. So I've enjoyed it so far, and I'm hoping going forward now for the last 3 races. Although there's one track during that I've never raced, so I've got a lot of prep work to do for that one. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully I can keep the performances in to see how high I can finish.
Oh, indeed. Well, we look forward to seeing you take to the tarmac round after round to see if you can end your championship campaign on your target high. But just before we do let you go, Mark, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yep. Everybody in my team, DCW Racing, hello to all of them, and thanks for all their support that we give to each other. We're a bunch of middle-aged men mainly, but we have good fun, and I think that's what it's all about. It's just having that level of fun. And thank you to Paddy Falconer for his supply of pies.
Oh, goodness me. I think Mr. Falconer will enjoy that one indeed. All the team will. But with that, Mark, congratulations on your maiden win in the series season today. A superb drive from start to finish. Thank you for joining us in the interview room, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Take care. Okay.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
So hearing there from Mark Collicott with an absolutely brilliant drive from start to finish today, and I think absolutely pleased with the result he's been able to pull off. But the big question is, of course, can he continue that momentum all the way through to the remainder of the season? And I have my gut feeling saying yes, he can. He'll be right in the podium fight all the way to the end in the silver class. And well, we'll have to see how he gets on in the feature race round at Ridskogen next week. But now coming on to our second interviewee of this evening, it is none other than Reggie Greenfield, who we heard from earlier on in today's broadcast in the build-up to Going Racing, but now we're going to hear from him again and hear his thoughts after the race in terms of that second place, which may not have been what he expected, given he was thinking there might have been an outside shot for a podium. But as we bring him into the interview room, Reggie Greenfield joins us now in the interview room from Tiki Simsport. Reggie, we caught up before the race and you were talking about targeting a podium, but you were in it for the win all the way down to the final lap and a second place at the very end. It must be a spectacular race for yourself today.
I was pretty pleased. It was dodging death at the beginning is basically what it came out to in the first few laps. Came around 130R twice and just saw mayhem in front of me and somehow managed to weave my way through. All our bronze guys in front there, so Mark Johnson, Sharples, they all ended up in that mayhem somehow. And then James, holy smokes, James didn't set a qualifying lap and he just came on like wildfire through the race. He was just getting quicker and quicker and quicker. And I couldn't drive the hairpin at the end of the race to save my life, and every time I got to the hairpin he was eating into my lead a little bit, and he deserved the win. And going back a few races, I actually had I knocked him out of a race about 3 or 4 races ago, so it kind of felt good for him to get the pass there. I didn't let him go by, but that wasn't on purpose, but at the same time I was happy to see him go by. So yeah, very pleased with the second. I was excited to run first for most of the race actually, so yeah, very pleased.
Oh, indeed. And dissecting the race down into some components, in terms of that survival, of course, coming through 130R and seeing cars stricken there each and every time, what kept you on the straight and narrow in terms of your focus on you're leading in the class, or you gradually pick up the lead, you see bronze drivers ahead of you, particularly Mark Johnson losing out, and then you find yourself up there, and what stops you from making that same mistake in the beast that is the Mercedes?
Well, I just finished that 10-hour race, and when I wasn't murdered by other drivers in the 10-hour race, I actually ran the car very well, and we ran a damaged car for quite a while, and I was quite impressed with the lap times I was still able to put in. So running the car safe, I was pretty good at doing that. So once I was on my own and I wasn't really threatened, it was just a matter of running the car safe. And like I said, if it hadn't been for James coming on like he did at the end, I would have had first place. But I'm like I said, very pleased with the second.
Indeed, and coming on to that battle between yourself and James, we saw the gap coming down rapidly, but it was a gap that just seemed to suddenly decrease, because going into the pits, I believe you had a gap of about 7 to 8 seconds. Was there anything in the pits that perhaps contributed to the gap, or was it just purely James's pace on that second stint, because it just came on so quickly?
Yes, I probably wouldn't have battled James at the end. I had a little incident. I went past my pit lane. I thought I was in a spot where my pit was going on. I grabbed a drink of water. It actually flipped my VR headset up because I thought I was in position. Finished my drink of water, put my VR headset down. I realized I'd gone too far, so I had to back up. So I probably lost about, I don't know, between 5 and 10 seconds, where I thought I didn't take tires. I was only taking fuel. As soon as I backed up, I had the fuel I needed. So yeah, that was a silly mistake.
Oh, goodness. And then it set us up, of course, for an absolute thriller all the way to the end. And as the time wound down and James got close, we saw in the run up to the final lap, he was taking these little peeks into turn number 1 on the inside. Were you going to react to those, or were you sort of, no, he's not close enough? Because he was getting closer and closer with every time you visited turn 1.
Well, after that last incident that we had in the other race, we chatted offline, and I apologized. I said, yeah, I didn't mean to do it. It was one of them was just a racing incident. The other one was just a braking mistake. And so we were on good terms about that. And we looked forward to racing again. So here we were racing for first and second, and I could see him taking the peak up the inside on one, but I knew he didn't have enough positions, so I just held my line. But at the end, like I said, coming out of the hairpin, he had the overtake, and it was just okay, yeah, go on by. I don't know if that's where he got me or if he got me on the back straight. I'm not sure, but yeah, he definitely had the pace, and then once he was ahead, he actually stretched it out. I brought it close again right at the final line, but I knew I couldn't catch him.
Oh, indeed, but a thriller all the way through, and it's great that there's that mutual camaraderie and respect between yourself and also Conley, and hopefully we get to see plenty more battling between the two of you all the way to the finish. But of course, looking forward to the remainder of the season, we head into round 10 next week at the Rudskogen circuit in Norway, and given the fact that after today's result, this has moved you up to P5 in the championship standings, how are you feeling for the third feature race round in a week's time?
It'll be great. I'm going to run the last three. I've now I say that, but I've just I'm probably taking on a new job here shortly, and I'm not sure if Sunday may end up on my work schedule. If it does, unfortunately, I might not actually be able to participate in the final 3 weeks. I'm really hoping that I can though, because I'm enjoying this. I'll definitely be back next season, but. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm missing 3 results right now, so I think with those 3 results, I could move up in the standings.
Oh, indeed, and we look forward to seeing how you get on the remainder. But if you're not able to join us, we will miss you, but at the same time, congratulations on the new job, and we do hope that works out. But just before we do let you go, Reggie, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Well, like I said, James, congratulations, James. Great race. Happy to see you win.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say that, Reggie, to James. I'm sure James will appreciate that. But with that, congratulations on your second place today. And we look forward to seeing you take to the tarmac in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul.
So hearing there from Reggie Greenfield, our bronze second place driver for Tiki Simsport in a solid drive, and in the end exposing a slight mistake in the pit lane which contributed to the advantage he had over his rival of what was James Conley, coming down by a sizable margin, and combined with James Conley's absolutely flying pace, it went down to a final lap move by James Conley, who got the move done in order to take the win. But still great respect between the two, and I'm sure we're going to see plenty more battling and racing action between them before the series is up. But as we now come on to our final interview this evening, it is none other than, of course, Cy Anthony from Symphony Esports Black. And as we do get ready to interview the Platinum driver, a race of mixed fortunes for him, no doubt about it. But in the end, I think putting a positive spin on it with a Class P7 and overall P14, I think also ruined what could have been a major opportunity today. But as we do head over to Cy Anthony this time in order to interview him. Cy, as we join you in the waiting room because of our permissions not being possible to move you into the interview room, a difficult race for yourself today in the Symphony Esports Black Porsche. Started off at P3 over on the grid and in the class, but in the end, a couple of mistakes and incidents seeing you drop all the way down, but recovering to P7 in the class in the end. A positive end to the race, or not what you thought it was going to be today?
Hello. Difficult is a nice way of putting it. This track is just cursed for me, to be honest. I think last season I spun out of turn 1 as well. We did the Suzuka 10-hour last year, and I spun a 130R. So this is like just a cursed track for me. But it was fun in the end. I got to kind of drop down a bit into with maybe some of the guys that that weren't quite as quick. So it was nice to battle with a few people. But yeah, not the best race for me.
It's a difficult race for yourself, but let's talk about some of the positives. Qualifying firstly, P3 overall on the grid in a very close qualifying session, albeit with Hitchen only setting the only 56 of the session. You were only in the end a 10th off of being on that front row alongside Damien Lobbett. Was it the lap you were expecting, or do you think you could have been on that front row?
No, I could have been on the front row. I went much quicker in practice. The temperature was like 1 degree higher, but not enough to lose. Like I think it was like 4 tenths. I was off my practice time. So yeah, I could have been on the front, but a couple of mistakes in some of the opening laps, a few little off tracks here and there, which were probably foreshadowing what was going to happen in the race. But yeah, overall it was pretty good. I mean, we had a Symphonite lockout on the front 2 rows, so can't really ask for more than that.
Very true. Simple flying the flag on the front two rows, as you say, and then translating into the race, we saw in terms of battling at the start, you really getting stuck in versus Austin William Campbell and also Damien Lobbit through the opening sequence of corners. Of course, your teammates, but rivals within the team as well. Just take us through those opening laps.
Yeah. I mean, usually we try to play nice in the first few laps, but as we get towards the end of the season, I think it's every man for himself, especially when we're all in the platinum division. But yeah, I got a really good start. Obviously, being in P3 is a good spot to be behind when the leader goes. So I managed to jump Damien at the start. I think I was quite strong through the S's, so managed to pull a bit of a gap there. Yeah, over the first couple of laps, then I was kind of struggling to keep up with Johnny. Just went a bit deep at Spoon once, and then the final chicane as well. So dropped out of the draft from him a little bit. But yeah, I think I had the pace to do pretty well if I'd not had the mistakes. Looking at the lap times, I think the fastest laps was just me and Johnny in the 57s, high 57s. But yeah, just too many mistakes as usual.
Now, coming on to those mistakes and also the Porsche as well, we've seen how strong the Porsche is all season, given the current balance of performance with iRacing. But at the same time, it seems to be a very tricky car to yield around the circuit. What makes it so difficult?
It's not like the Merc was last season. I mean, everybody, is aware of the balance of performance, and it is the OP car, but it's not as easy to drive as the Merc was last season. It is a bit tail happy. If I'm honest, the BOP this week has actually probably helped out a little bit, adding a little bit of weight, especially in qualifying. I've really found it tricky in qualifying the last few laps, the last few races. The rear end is just super light, so the weight was actually a little bit of a help. But I think as with any of the cars, they're all strong in their own respects. But if you learn to drive it the correct way, the Porsche is obviously super strong traction out of the corners. So you've just got to like work with the advantages, I guess.
Indeed, and in working with those advantages, we got to see a revival of an old rivalry between yourself and Sam Congreve, making your way towards the end of the race, battling your way out of Spoon, the two of you. It must have felt great to be battling with your rival who you battled with for P2 in the Platinum Championship last season.
Yeah, we were just messaging now. Actually, it was really nice to see him back on track because he's been away for a little while. So yeah, that was quite fun to come out together. We had a moment through 130R. I don't know if you caught that on the stream.
Most
That was
definitely.
yeah. Yeah, another spin. He went to the inside and I was on the outside. I was like, do I back out or shall I just send it? I'll send it. And it didn't work out. But yeah, no, it was good fun. And Sam's super respectful as well. So like, yeah, I enjoy racing him on track.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And just a comment on, you were saying earlier about enjoying battling with drivers who you don't normally get to battle with further down the order. Of course, mixing up with the other classes as well. Just any thoughts on the gold or the silver or the bronze drivers you're battling with?
Yeah, I mean, the one that stands out to me was the double pass on the start finish straight. Again, don't know if you caught that one, but that was pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, I had some good battles with a few people. I think I got to a point. I don't remember who was in front of me, but I was sort of carving through the fields quite quickly initially, and then reached a little bit of a plateau, and whoever was in front of me was doing a really good job of staying ahead. I think I've eventually caught up, but yeah, I mean, from my side, it was just all super clean, hard racing, which was really good. I think I might have had a bit of a neckcode moment with Xander Hill into the final chicane, so yeah, apologies to Xander if I didn't quite give him enough room there, but yeah, it was overall good fun for me, to be honest.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And if you're wondering about that double pass into turns 1 and 2, yep, we may have just caught that on the broadcast cameras as well. But as we look ahead to the remainder of the series, of course, 3 races to go. And next week we head to Norway for the Rudskogen circuit for our 3rd feature race round of the calendar. How are you feeling for the circuit that's recently arrived in iRacing?
I haven't had a chance to drive it yet, so it's going to be interesting, especially as doing it as an endurance round. I don't know, maybe I'll just take this one a bit easier and just try and survive instead.
Well, it'll be the game of survival then in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Si, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Oh, shout out to Symphonite represent, but no, I don't think so.
No problem. Well, with that, Sciency, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on the result today, despite it not quite being perhaps the one you were targeting, but still brilliant racing from yourself. And we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in a week's time.
Cheers, Paul. Take care, man.
All the best. So hearing there from our final interviewee of this evening of Cy Anthony, and the Platinum driver there openly stating that with the mistakes that occurred over the course of his race, not quite the result he wanted, but still enjoying the battling with drivers he perhaps would not necessarily normally battle with, given he's more towards the front of the field than in the mid-pack, but enjoying the race. And then also a special mention there to Sam Congreve, who's returned after a brief hiatus and enjoying the race. And there was his old rival from Season 7, and of course that moment where Anthony tried to go round the outside at 130R, but it wasn't to be, and the car came loose and was into the wall instead. But still, I'm sure the two of them will be battling once again in a week's time. But with our post-round interviews complete, ladies and gentlemen, I know what you're all thinking right now. What's happening with the standings? Well, we do have the updated standings available, and we start off with the overall top 20. And we can see now, after 9 rounds, with drop scores in effect. And just a reminder, the numbers you see in red on screen are the dropped scores currently for each driver, and those will continue to be updated all the way through to the end of the season. Overall, it is Jonathan Hitchen who leads the way, 22 points clear of Daniel Thomas there. The Symphony Esports white driver with the win today, and the maximum points haul for pole position and also the fastest lap of the race, continue to build up a perfect string of results, which will set himself up very well for the season at finale. Daniel Thomas there, meanwhile, on 85 points, 13 clear of Joe Zarkos there. And with Zarkos not in attendance now for 4 rounds back-to-back, one would imagine that perhaps Zarkos will be returning later on in the season to wrap up his championship and take the fight back to Thomas, albeit he does have a 0 there that cannot be removed, and that's around number 2 at the moment, and therefore Zarkos now has got the pressure on him should he return as of next week. Joshua Pratt there, the privateer in P4, continuing to run well, is the gold driver, holding on to that P4 position, only ahead of Damien Lovett based on result countback now, with Austin William Campbell moving up the order as well into P6, albeit those scores I think not quite perhaps 100% accurate, but the order is. And then Stephen Masters in P7 there, the silver driver, continues to have that strong run of form, moving ahead of Cy Anthony, with Nathan Foster and Alex Hill there now 9th and 10th. Best of the rest, meanwhile, in P11, well, that is none other than Callum Reid-Garton there on 42 points outside of the top 10 based on result countback. And then come on to the Platinum class standing. So we can see in the Platinum class, it is the same story at the very top. Hitchen ahead of Thomas, and then Joe Zarkos in 3rd, but only a point off of him. Austin William Campbell there in P4 with a 5-point advantage over Nathan Foster, and the battle for P3 could not be tighter as we go deeper and deeper into the championship campaign. Damien Lovett in P6 there, dropping outside the top 5 for one of the first times this season, but continued to try and close up as much as possible, with the Symphony Esports white driver ahead of his black teammate peer, and when I say black, Symphony Esports black, we're referred to, and that is Cy Anthony in P7 there, 1 point between the two of them, with Carl McGurk there in P8 for UKSimRacing, ahead of James Ackland for BRM Racing at P9, and Callum Reid-Garton completing the Platinum top 10. Richard Yep there, P11, best of the rest, ahead of Austin Gretorix, Christian Zaruta, Darren Orkett, Dominic Roberts, Sam Colgreve, Jacko Taylor, Paul Busby, Gareth Higgins, Oliver Fennell, and Max Furtwängler. But as we come onto the gold classification here, we can see that Alex Hill leading the way now in what is 102 points versus Pratt on 101. And as the gap between the two of them continues to close on up here, only a point between the pair. Now as we go deeper and deeper into the championship, the question will be who out of the two is going to come away on top. With Tilling losing considerable points today, he has fallen a little bit behind, but let's not rule him out, to be fair. Martin Tin, the UKSimRacing pink driver, has plenty of time to go, and indeed the BMW M4 driver has been the driver who's been typically on form there and made it count when it matters most, whereas Alex Hill and Joshua Pratt both in their ascendancy, and Pratt today really leading the way. And it's going to be interesting to see how that 8-point gap between the top 3 will swing as the drop scores continue to come further and further into effect. Meanwhile, outside of the top 3 there in P4, leading the way on the rest of the field on 72 points, it is Sam Sherwood, 12 clear of John Eddowes, thanks to Sherwood's brilliant result today, and John Eddowes moves up to P5, 8 points clear of Peter Cox with a great result. And Peter Cox as well, that second place of the gold class, giving himself the run up to 52 points, and now 6 clear of Ryan Moles there in P7, ahead of Patrick Falconer P8, Stuart Brown P9, and Shane Abbott completed the top 10. Ollie Pimney best the rest in P11 there for Civic Esports Gold, ahead of Brandon Hay P12, and then it's Joe Newman, Chris Hitchen, Daniel Dan Weaver, Joe Amos, Billy Mann, and John Watt who complete the gold standings. And as we come into the silver class now, we can see that Stephen Masters leads the way by an advantage of what's grown to 19 points over David Larson there. The Civic Esports white driver chasing after the privateer, but I think focusing on the fact that he's only 1 point clear of Matthew Whitefoot as the two continue to oscillate in the battle for P2. But keep in mind that Colin Patterson's not too far back for Tiki Simsport Tower with a 5-point advantage over Chris Eddersford there, and both drivers really started to build a good run of form. And could they be outside contenders to have the run for P2? And indeed, could any of these drivers take the fight to Stephen Masters, given that Masters' pace was very strong here today at Suzuka, but he wasn't able to make it count in bringing it all the way to the end after a major error? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But the battle for P2 is definitely well and truly on. Mark Collicott in P6 there, 3 points off of the top 5, and also well within a good run after his maiden win today, with Tyson Valenda P7 ahead of Jeff Griffiths at P8, only on result countback, and then we can see Casper Brotner and Jerry Gran not too far behind in P9, P10 respectively. Sean Cranley Swash missing out on a huge podium result today, but he is in P11 now, best of the rest there in the Lamborghini Huracan for the privateer outfit of Verano Motorsport, and then we do have Rob Armstrong P12 ahead of Murray Luca P13, Ryan Williams, Paul Davey, Matthew Morris, Calvin Owens, and Aaron James completing the silver standings. And as we come on to the bronze class here for our final Drivers' Championship standings grouping, Mark Johnson, with his result today, continuing to lead only by 5 points over Darren Sharples, with Daniel Pays P3 there, and both Sharples and Pays are losing considerable ground in the overall considerations of these drop scores versus Johnson, with both drivers finishing behind the championship leader. James Conley now up into P4 on 88 points and continued to close the delta to Daniel Pays after his win today, seeing him set himself up well for the final 3 rounds of the season. And Reggie Greenfield inching closer and moving up into the top 5 ahead of Sean Clark there in P6, Ryan Gonzalez P7 for Tiki Simsport Tower, and it's Richard Baxter, Matty Wild and Matt Edmondson, the trio of privateers. They're completing the top 10 with best of the rest P11 Thomas Barjac, and it's Stephen Cox, James Chapman, Ashley Coverdale and Andrew Murray who complete the Bronze Championship standings. But not to forget about the Teams Championship standings, we can see here that Civic Esports White lead the way now by an advantage of 36 points over BWT Motorsport. Their advantage continues to hold firm as the results coming in and gaining more points over BWT Motorsport today, with UKSimRacing Pink only 20 points off of BWT Motorsport and keeping well within arm's reach. But Tiki Simsport Tower now very close to the back of UKSimRacing Pink, only 2 points between the pair, with the other outfit of Tiki Simsport in P5 down 143 points, 5 off of their sister outfit, and both teams very much alive in their championship hunt. But let's not count out DCW Racing, having one of their strongest performances of the season today with 34 points accrued in P6. They're only 4 points off of the top 5, and they could be a contender to get into the top 3 when all is said and done at the end of the season, with UKSimRacing in P7 at 10 points off, and it's BRM Racing, Symphony Esports Black and Simam Racing to complete the top 10, with Symphony Esports Gold P11 ahead of Effect Esports there in P12. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the championship standings come the end of this round. Of course, provisional subject to stewards' inquiries, but now it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and want to know more about the UK sim racing community in general, all the series we have on and everything else in between, then we would recommend that firstly you do subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's UK Sim Racing on YouTube, alternatively our Twitch channel, that's twitch.tv/UK Sim Racing, to keep up to date with all of our latest broadcasts of the series we run on a regular weekly basis, and also our one-off events and our limited seasonal events. But on top of that as well, you may want to visit our official website, that's UKSimRacing.co.uk, or our Twitter of twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates, Swello Meadow Sim Racing Coaching, their YouTube link available on screen there. And the reason why you should listen to Swello Meadow Sim Racing Coaching, being a multi-winner in official iRacing series, Swello Meadows' word goes a long way in terms of enabling you to improve your iRacing and sim racing performance, whether it be a 10th of a lap, alternatively you're looking for more consistency in terms of race pace. Swello Meadow will be able to provide guidance on all factors iRacing orientated, and indeed the #1 source of sim racing coaching. On top of that as well, Race Anywhere they're at raceanywhere.co.uk. And Race Anywhere, to put you in the context, is the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Also to Demon Tweaks, their website demon-tweaks.com, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level or discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realize your motorsport ambitions. And last but not least, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Prime, Amazon Web Services, and also Amazon Fire TV, their web address amazon.co.uk. But now we must turn our attentions forward to a week's time, where we head to the Norwegian circuit of Rudskogen for our third feature race round of the season. Round 10 on Sunday the 20th of November 2022. Will we bring it to you live at the circuit, and how will our drivers get on at the tricky circuit that many may not have yet acquired or got used to? Well, we'll find out in due course, but until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. We've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit of the Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.